The night Elara's world shattered began with silk and silver. She stood in the grand hall of the Mooncrest Palace, her fingers trembling against the rough fabric of her borrowed dress. Around her, hundreds of wolves glittered in their finest clothes, their laughter echoing off marble columns that reached toward a ceiling painted with constellations. The air smelled of wine and roses and something else, something primal that made her wolf stir restlessly beneath her skin. She shouldn't have been there. Weak Omegas didn't attend the Crimson Ceremony, the sacred ritual where the pack's unmated wolves sought their destined bonds. But her uncle had insisted, his smile too wide, his eyes too eager when he pushed her toward the palace doors 3 hours ago. "You never know," he'd said, smoothing down her dark hair with hands that smelled like cheap whiskey. "Maybe the moon goddess has plans even for you." The moon goddess had plans, all right, just not the kind that led to happy endings. Elara pressed herself against a column, watching the beautiful wolves dance and drink and touch each other with the casual confidence of those who'd never questioned their place in the world. Her wolf whimpered, and she understood why. This wasn't their territory. This was a forest full of predators, and they were nothing but prey. "Is that really her?" The whisper came from somewhere to her left. Elara didn't turn. She'd learned early that acknowledging mockery only invited more. "The charity case? God. She looks even worse up close. I heard she can barely shift. Took her until she was 16. My cousin said her wolf is the size of a dog. A small dog." The laughter cut through the music like knives. Elara's chest tightened. She focused on breathing, on the cool marble beneath her palm, on anything but the truth in their words. Her wolf was small. Her shift was slow and painful, nothing like the fluid transformations of normal wolves. During pack runs, she lagged so far behind that the warriors often had to wait, their impatience rolling off them in waves that made her want to disappear into the earth itself. Weak, defective, broken. The words had followed her since childhood, whispered by teachers and shouted by bullies, and murmured by her own family when they thought she couldn't hear. "Ladies and gentlemen," the voice boomed through the hall, cutting through conversation like a blade through silk. "The moment we've all been waiting for. Please welcome the pride of the Mooncrest Pack, the future of our kingdom, the Alpha Twins." The crowd parted like a tide, and Elara's breath caught. They entered from the eastern archway, moving with the synchronized grace of wolves who'd trained together since birth. Identical faces, sharp and beautiful in the way that dangerous things often were. Tall bodies that radiated power. Eyes that swept the room like they owned every soul in it. Probably because they did. Kale, the elder twin by 7 minutes, wore black that made his silver eyes look like frozen lakes. His expression was carved from ice, beautiful and completely unreadable. The observant one, people called him. The one who watched and calculated and never revealed his hand until the game was already won. Beside him, Damon blazed in deep crimson. His identical features twisted into an expression of casual cruelty that made Elara's wolf press low in submission. The ruthless one. The one who enjoyed the power he wielded. Who smiled when he hurt people. Who'd once broken an Omega's arm during training and laughed when she cried. The twins were 24, unmated, and according to pack gossip, in no hurry to change that status. They had their pick of every eligible wolf in the kingdom. Beautiful alphas, powerful betas, graceful Omegas who could shift into wolves the size of horses and fight with the strength of bears. What would they want with someone like her? Nothing, her brain supplied. They want nothing from you. You're invisible to them. Safe. "The Crimson Ceremony will now begin," the announcer continued. "As tradition dictates, our unmated alphas will select their potential bonds from those gathered. Should both wolves feel the pull, they will proceed to the courtyard for the moon blessing." Elara's uncle had explained this part, his breath sour with alcohol and desperation. The alphas would move through the crowd, following their instincts, seeking the wolves whose scent called to their inner beasts. It was archaic and deeply traditional, but in a kingdom ruled by ancient bloodlines, tradition mattered more than progress. The music changed, something low and primal that made every unmated wolf in the room stand straighter. Elara watched as alphas began to circulate, their movements predatory and purposeful. She saw a tall alpha approach a stunning beta in silver, saw the way he leaned in to scent her neck, saw her shiver and nod. They moved toward the courtyard together, and the crowd applauded politely. This happened again and again. Wolves finding wolves, bonds forming, potential futures unfolding with each accepted invitation. Elara remained by her column, grateful for her insignificance. Then the smell hit her. Pine and winter frost and something wild that made her wolf surge forward with a force that nearly drove her to her knees. Her vision blurred. Her skin heated. Every nerve in her body suddenly focused on a single point in space, on a presence moving through the crowd like gravity itself had shifted. No, 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 no. She knew what this was. Had heard the older wolves describe it in reverent whispers. The pull, the call, the first sign that the moon goddess had selected your match, had woven your soul together with another's in a bond that transcended choice or reason. Couldn't be. Not her. Not with. The crowd parted, and Damon stood 3 feet away. His silver eyes locked on her face. His nostrils flared. His expression shifted from boredom to shock to something darker. Something that made her wolf whimper in confusion because it wasn't desire or joy or even curiosity. It was disgust. "You," he said, and the single word carried across the sudden silence that had fallen over their corner of the hall. "You're the one my wolf is howling for?" Elara couldn't speak. Her throat had closed, and her body had locked in place, every instinct screaming at her to run. But her legs wouldn't obey. Damon took a step closer, then another. He moved like he was approaching something contaminated. His beautiful face twisted in revulsion. When he was close enough that she could see the flecks of gold in his silver eyes, he leaned in and inhaled deeply. The sound he made was almost a growl. "Moon goddess, have mercy," he muttered. "It is you." Someone in the crowd laughed nervously. Others had begun to stare, sensing drama. Elara forced herself to meet his eyes. "I don't understand." "You don't." Damon's laugh was sharp enough to draw blood. "Of course you don't. You're too weak to even recognize a bond when it's staring you in the face." The words landed like physical blows. Around them, she could hear whispers starting, could feel hundreds of eyes turning in their direction. "I'm sorry," she whispered, though she didn't know what she was apologizing for. Existing, maybe, being born wrong, having the audacity to be matched to someone so far above her station. "Sorry?" Damon's voice rose. "You're sorry? Do you have any idea what you've done? What this means?" Kale appeared at his brother's shoulder. His expression still unreadable, but his body tense. "Damon, not here." "Why not here?" Damon spun to face his twin. "Everyone should know. Everyone should see what the moon goddess has cursed me with." "Brother." "No." Damon turned back to Elara, and the hatred in his eyes made her step backward until her spine hit the column. "Look at her. Really look. She can barely stand in a room full of alphas without shaking. Her wolf is so weak she probably can't even hunt. And the goddess expects me to bind myself to that? To produce heirs with someone whose bloodline is so diluted she might as well be human." Each word was carefully chosen to wound, delivered with surgical precision. Elara felt them land, felt them burrow beneath her skin where they'd live forever, where she'd hear them in her own voice during dark moments for the rest of her life. She waited for Kale to intervene, to defend her, to do anything. But the silent twin just watched, his silver eyes moving between her face and his brother's, his expression revealing nothing. "I, Damon Blackthorn, future alpha of the Mooncrest Pack." Damon's voice rang out clear and strong, a formal declaration that made the entire hall fall silent. "Reject Elara Thorn as my mate. I reject the bond the moon goddess has placed between us. I refuse to accept her as my equal, my partner, or my future." The pain hit like lightning striking her chest. Elara gasped, her hand flying to her heart as something inside her tore. The bond, newly formed and fragile, shattered under the weight of his rejection. She could feel it breaking, could feel pieces of her soul crying out for something that was being ripped away before she'd even understood she had it. She dropped to her knees, her vision going white with agony. Somewhere far away, she heard screaming, realized it was coming from her own throat. The rejection of a mate bond was rare, almost unheard of in their society. The physical pain was legendary. Wolves who'd experienced it described it as having your bones broken from the inside, as burning alive while drowning, as dying slowly over the course of seconds that felt like hours. They hadn't exaggerated. Through the haze of pain, Elara felt hands on her shoulders. Kale had knelt beside her, his face still carefully blank, but his touch was gentle as he kept her from collapsing completely. "Breathe," he said quietly. "It will pass." She wanted to ask why he hadn't stopped it, why he'd let his brother destroy her in front of everyone. But she couldn't form words, could barely remember how to pull air into her lungs. The pain began to fade by degrees, settling into a dull, throbbing ache that filled every cell of her body. When she could finally focus her eyes again, she found Damon still standing over her, his expression triumphant and cold. "Let this be a lesson," he announced to the watching crowd. "The bond is not infallible. The goddess makes mistakes, and when she does, we have the right to correct them." Applause, scattered at first, then building. Wolves who valued strength and power above all else, approving of an alpha who'd had the courage to reject a weak mate. Elara felt something inside her break that had nothing to do with the mate bond. Some fundamental belief in fairness, in kindness, in the idea that the world could be good if you were just good enough. Kale helped her to her feet, his hands steady and impersonal. "Can you walk?" She nodded, not trusting her voice. "Then I suggest you leave, quickly." It was the kindest thing anyone had said to her all night. She took his advice, stumbling through the crowd of staring wolves, their whispers following her like smoke. At the grand doors, she risked one glance back. Damon had already moved on, was already approaching a beautiful alpha in gold, was already smiling like the last 5 minutes hadn't happened. Kale was watching her though. Their eyes met across the distance, and for just a moment, she thought she saw something flicker in his expression. Pity, maybe, or regret. Then someone stepped between them, and the connection broke. Elara pushed through the doors and ran. She made it to the edge of the palace grounds before her legs gave out. Collapsed in the manicured gardens where the sounds of the ceremony were distant and muffled, where she could finally let the tears come. Her uncle would be furious. He'd gambled everything on tonight, on the slim possibility that someone might see value in her, might offer her a place in a stronger pack. Instead, she'd been publicly rejected by one of the most powerful alphas in the kingdom. She was ruined, completely and utterly ruined. A twig snapped behind her. Elara's head jerked up, her wolf's instincts finally kicking in despite the pain. A shape moved in the shadows between the hedges, large and hulking. "Please," she whispered. "Please just leave me alone." The shape resolved into a man as he stepped into the moonlight. Tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in dark clothes that looked expensive. His face was sharp and handsome in a way that made her think of statues, of things carved from marble that were beautiful but cold. Not a guest. His clothes were wrong for the ceremony, too practical, too dark. "You're bleeding," he said, his voice deep and rough. Elara touched her nose, found her fingers coming away red. A nosebleed, probably from the trauma of the rejection. Her body was still in shock. "I'm fine," she lied. The man tilted his head, studying her with eyes that caught the moonlight strangely. Gold, she realized. Not silver like the Blackthorn twins, but gold like melted coins. "You were rejected tonight," he said. Not a question. "You watched." Fresh humiliation burned through her. "I arrived late, but I heard." He took a step closer and she caught his scent. Something wild and clean, like a forest after rain. "Damon Blackthorn is a fool." The unexpected words startled a laugh out of her, though it sounded more like a sob. "He's a future alpha. I'm nothing. You're hurt." The man knelt in front of her with the fluid grace of a born predator, pulling a handkerchief from his pocket. "May I?" She should have said no, should have run. Didn't know this man, didn't know his intentions, didn't know anything except that he was showing her more kindness than anyone had in years. She nodded. He dabbed at her nose gently, his touch careful despite the obvious strength in his hands. Up close, she could see scars on his knuckles, could see the way his muscles moved beneath his clothes like coiled steel. A warrior, she thought, maybe a palace guard. "What's your name?" he asked. "Elara." "Just Elara?" "Elara Thorn. Of the... Well, I don't really have a pack anymore, do I?" The reality of her situation was starting to sink in. "I'll be lucky if they don't exile me." The man's jaw tightened. "For being rejected? That's not how the law works. The law protects wolves who matter." She took the handkerchief from him, held it to her nose herself. "I don't. You matter." The words were said with such quiet conviction that she looked up sharply, meeting those strange gold eyes. For a moment, something passed between them, some understanding or recognition that she couldn't name. Then voices echoed from the palace, and the moment shattered. "I should go," the man said, rising smoothly to his feet. "But Elara Thorn, if I may offer some advice? Please, run. Leave this place tonight. Don't wait for them to decide what to do with you." "I can't. I have nowhere to." "Then make somewhere." His expression was fierce now, urgent. "You're stronger than you know. Don't let them make you believe otherwise." Before she could respond, he turned and disappeared into the shadows between the hedges, moving so silently that she half wondered if she'd imagined him. The handkerchief in her hands was real though. Expensive silk, embroidered with a symbol she didn't recognize. A crown wreathed in thorns. She tucked it into her dress and forced herself to stand. The man was right. She needed to leave. Needed to disappear before the pack elders decided her punishment. Being rejected was one thing, but being rejected by someone like Damon would bring shame to her entire family line. They'd want her gone, want her erased like a mistake they could pretend had never happened. Fine. She'd make it easy for them. Elara started walking, not back toward the palace but toward the forest that bordered the grounds. She had no plan, no destination, no resources beyond the clothes on her back and a stranger's handkerchief. But she had her life, and after tonight, she'd learned exactly how little that meant to anyone but her. So she'd keep it, protect it, make something of it despite everything working against her. Behind her, music and laughter drifted from the crimson ceremony, where beautiful wolves were finding their perfect matches and beginning their perfect lives. Ahead of her, the forest waited, dark and dangerous and full of possibilities. Elara chose the forest. The morning after the worst night of her life, Elara woke to ice water being thrown in her face. She gasped, choking, her body jerking upright from where she'd collapsed in her uncle's basement. The concrete floor was cold beneath her, and her dress from the ceremony was still damp with tears and blood. "Get up." Her uncle's voice was flat and hard. "You've got visitors." Elara's wolf stirred weakly. The rejection had left her vulnerable. Her connection to her wolf damaged in ways she didn't fully understand. Everything hurt. A deep ache that started in her chest and radiated outward until even her fingers throbbed. "I said get up." Her uncle's boot connected with her ribs. Not hard enough to break anything but enough to send pain lancing through her already battered body. She struggled to her feet, swaying. Two men in official pack uniforms stood in the doorway, their expressions carefully neutral. "Elara Thorn?" the taller one asked. "Yes. By order of the Pack Council, you are hereby summoned to the Hall of Judgment to answer for your offense against the Blackthorn family." Her offense, as if being rejected was something she'd done to them. What offense? The words escaped before she could stop them. The shorter guard snorted. "Attempting to trap an alpha heir with a false bond claim. Embarrassing the pack with your weakness. Should I continue?" "I didn't. But what was the point? They'd already decided she was guilty. The trial would be a formality." "You have 1 hour to make yourself presentable," the tall guard said. "We'll wait upstairs." They left, and her uncle moved closer, his breath already stinking of morning whiskey. "You've destroyed us. Do you understand that? No pack will take us now. We're contaminated by association with you." "Uncle Marcus, I didn't ask for any of this." His hand connected with her face so fast she didn't see it coming. Her head snapped to the side, and she tasted blood. "You had one job," he hissed. Stay invisible. Stay quiet. Don't draw attention. But you couldn't even manage that, could you? You had to go and get yourself matched to an alpha heir, had to make a spectacle. The bond wasn't my choice. Then you should have rejected it yourself. Should have known your place and stepped aside before he had to humiliate himself by refusing you publicly. Marcus grabbed her arm, his fingers digging in hard enough to bruise. Now we all pay for your arrogance. He threw her backward, and she hit the wall hard enough to knock the breath from her lungs. 1 hour, he repeated. Don't make them wait. The Hall of Judgment was a circular room in the oldest part of the pack complex, its walls lined with portraits of past alphas who stared down at proceedings with painted disapproval. Elara stood in the center, trying not to shake as the council filed in. 7 elders, 3 men and 4 women, all of them powerful wolves in their own right. They took their seats at the curved table that formed a half-circle around her, their faces grave. Alpha Blackthorn, father of the twins, sat at the center. He was an older version of his sons. His silver hair swept back from a face that had once been handsome but was now hard with age and authority. Elara Thorn, he began, his voice carrying easily in the acoustically perfect room. You stand accused of attempting to deceive an alpha heir with false bond claims. How do you plead? Not guilty. Her voice was barely a whisper. The bond was real. I didn't. Silence. One of the female elders cut her off. You will speak only when directly questioned. Alpha Blackthorn leaned forward. Multiple witnesses report that you deliberately positioned yourself in my son's path during the Crimson ceremony. Is this true? No. I was trying to stay hidden. Yet you wore a dress above your station. Drew attention to yourself. It was borrowed. I didn't have anything else suitable for. So you admit you planned to attend? Another elder interrupted. Despite knowing your presence would be unwelcome. This was a trap. Every question was designed to twist her words, to make innocence look like guilt. I was told to attend, she said carefully. By my uncle. Convenient to blame family who cannot speak in their own defense. But he's here. He can testify. Your uncle has already given his statement, Alpha Blackthorn said. He claims you insisted on attending despite his warnings. That you believed yourself entitled to an alpha mate despite your obvious deficiencies. Liar. Her uncle was a liar and a drunk and a coward, but he was also a full member of the pack with rights and standing that she'd never possessed. That's not true, she said, but even to her own ears it sounded weak. The questioning continued for what felt like hours. They picked apart every moment of the ceremony, every glance, every breath, until even Elara began to doubt her own memories. Had she somehow subconsciously drawn Damon to her? Was she so desperate for connection that her wolf had broadcast some kind of false signal? No. She knew what she'd felt. The bond had been real, even if it had been unwanted by both of them. Finally, Alpha Blackthorn raised his hand for silence. The council will now deliberate. Elara Thorn, you are dismissed to the antechamber. A guard escorted her to a small room with stone walls and no windows. She sank onto the single bench, her body trembling with exhaustion and fear. What would they decide? Exile was the kindest option. Some packs practiced execution for serious offenses, though she couldn't imagine they'd go that far for someone as insignificant as her. Unless they wanted to make an example. Unless Damon had demanded it. The door opened and she looked up expecting the guard. Cale Blackthorn stood in the doorway instead. The silent twin looked different in daylight, his silver eyes more gray, his expression as unreadable as ever. He closed the door behind him and leaned against it, studying her. They're going to exile you, he said finally. Strip you of pack affiliation and send you to the borderlands. The borderlands, wild territory between kingdoms, full of rogues and dangers and wolves who'd been cast out for crimes far worse than hers. For how long? She whispered. Indefinitely. You'll be assigned to a border patrol unit, one of the disposable squads they send to deal with rogue attacks. If you survive 6 months, they might consider reinstatement. Maybe, if she survived. The words hung heavy between them. Why are you telling me this? Elara asked. Cale pushed off from the door, moving closer. Because you should know what you're walking into. The borderlands aren't like the protected territories. There are no rules there. No laws. No one who will help you if things go wrong. Then I'll die. The words came out flat, emotionless. Is that what you came to hear? That your brother's rejection will kill me after all. Something flickered in Cale's expression. There and gone too fast to identify. No. Then what do you want? He was silent for a long moment, his eyes searching her face like he was looking for something specific. Finally, he reached into his jacket and pulled out a small leather pouch. Take this. Elara stared at it. What is it? Money. Enough to buy supplies. Maybe bribe a border guard if you need to run. He held it out. Take it. Why would you help me? Maybe I feel guilty. His voice was still flat, giving nothing away. Maybe I think my brother's an idiot. Maybe I don't care at all and this is just entertaining to me. Does it matter? She took the pouch, her fingers brushing his. The contact sent a small shock through her, and she jerked back. Cale noticed. Of course he noticed. The bond damage goes both ways, you know? He might have rejected you, but his wolf is still crying for you. It's driving him insane. Good, she said and meant it. The corner of Cale's mouth twitched, almost like he wanted to smile. Survive the borderlands, Elara Thorn. And if you do, maybe we'll meet again. He left as silently as he'd arrived, and Elara was alone with a pouch of money and a sliver of something that might have been hope. The council's verdict was delivered 2 hours later. Exile to the borderlands, immediate deployment, no opportunity for appeals or goodbyes. They gave her 30 minutes to gather her belongings. She owned almost nothing. A few changes of clothes, her mother's silver necklace that she'd hidden from her uncle for years, the handkerchief from the mysterious stranger at the ceremony. Everything fit in a small pack that she slung over her shoulder. The transport carriage was waiting in the courtyard. A rough wooden cart pulled by 2 massive draft horses. 5 other wolves were already inside, all of them looking as defeated and terrified as she felt. Exiles. Criminals. The pack's unwanted. Move. The guard shoved her toward the cart. Not roughly but not gently either. Elara climbed in, finding a spot against the side rail. The other wolves avoided her eyes, lost in their own misery. As the cart began to move, she looked back at the pack complex. Somewhere in one of those buildings, Damon was probably celebrating his narrow escape from a weak mate. Somewhere else, Kale was doing whatever Kale did when he wasn't watching people with those unsettling gray eyes. Neither of them came to see her off. Why would they? She was nothing to them. Less than nothing now. The cart picked up speed, taking her away from the only home she'd ever known, toward a future that promised nothing but pain and death and possibly, if she was very lucky, revenge. Elara touched the pouch of money hidden in her jacket, felt the weight of her mother's necklace against her chest, and made herself a promise. She would survive. Not for them. Not for the pack that had thrown her away or the mate who'd rejected her or the uncle who'd betrayed her. For herself. She would survive and she would become strong, and one day when she was ready, she would come back. And they would be sorry they'd ever underestimated her. If you're feeling what Elara's feeling right now, if this story is pulling at something in you, hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what you think should happen next. Should she find strength in the borderlands? Should she make them all pay? Let me know. And don't forget to subscribe because this story is just getting started. The borderlands greeted Elara with rain and blood. The cart had traveled for 3 days through increasingly wild terrain, the road becoming less a road and more a suggestion of a path carved through hostile wilderness. They'd stopped only twice, given minimal food and water, treated like cargo rather than living beings. On the evening of the 3rd day, they arrived at Outpost 7, a collection of rough buildings surrounded by a wooden palisade that looked like it had been repaired 100 times and would need 100 more. Out! Barked the guard who'd driven them. Welcome to paradise. The 6 exiles climbed down from the cart, stiff and sore and exhausted. Elara's legs nearly gave out when her feet hit solid ground. Around them, the outpost bustled with activity. Wolves in mismatched armor hurried between buildings, carrying weapons and supplies. In the distance, she could hear shouting and what sounded like metal on metal. Training, maybe, or fighting. A woman approached, tall and muscular with a scar running from her left eye to her jaw. Her hair was cut short, practical rather than beautiful, and her eyes were the kind of hard that came from seeing too much death. Fresh meat, she said, looking them over with obvious disdain. Fantastic. I'm Commander Reeves. You answer to me now, and if you value your lives, you'll do exactly what I say when I say it. One of the other exiles, a young man with beta markings, raised his hand hesitantly. Ma'am, we were told there would be training before. Training? Reeves laughed, sharp and humorless. You think we have time for training? There are rogue packs hitting our borders every other night, and we're understaffed by half. You'll learn on the job or you'll die. Preferably learn. She gestured to a smaller building near the eastern wall. Barracks are there. Pick a bunk, don't touch anyone else's shit, and be at the training yard at dawn. We'll see what you're made of. Commander! Another guard approached, his expression tight. We've got movement on the northern ridge. Looks like a scouting party. Reeves cursed. How many? At least 6. Maybe more. Sound the alarm. Get every capable fighter to the north wall. She looked back at the exiles. That includes you lot. Grab weapons from the armory and follow me. But we just arrived. The beta started. And now you're defending your new home. Move. The next minutes were chaos. Elara found herself pushed into the armory, a drafty building filled with weapons in various states of disrepair. She grabbed a short sword because it was the only thing light enough for her to lift easily, then followed the other exiles toward the northern wall. The outpost's defenses were rudimentary at best. The wooden palisade was maybe 15 feet high, with narrow walkways at the top where defenders could shoot arrows or throw spears. Elara climbed the ladder with shaking hands, her wolf whimpering in fear. She'd never been in a real fight, had avoided confrontation her entire life because losing meant pain and pain meant drawing attention and attention meant more pain. But now there was nowhere to hide. There! Someone shouted, pointing toward the tree line. Shapes moved in the darkness between the trees, low and fast. Wolves, but not like any Elara had seen before. These were massive, their fur matted and their eyes reflecting the torchlight with an eerie green glow. Rogues, wolves who'd abandoned pack law, who lived wild and violent and answered to no authority but their own hunger. Archers, Reeves commanded. On my mark. Bowstrings creaked. Elara gripped her sword, her palms slick with sweat. The rogues burst from the tree line in a wave of fur and teeth and savage intent. Fire! Arrows flew, and some found their marks. Elara heard yelps of pain, saw bodies fall. But there were too many, and they moved too fast, and within seconds they were at the wall, scrambling up the wooden posts with claws that dug deep into the wood. Hold the line. Reeves's voice cut through the screaming. Do not let them over the wall. A rogue reached the top of the palisade 3 feet from where Elara stood. It was huge, easily twice her size, its jaws dripping with saliva and something darker. Blood, she realized. It had already killed someone. The rogue's green eyes locked on her, and it lunged. Elara's body moved on pure instinct. She swung the sword, felt it connect with something solid, heard a yelp. The rogue fell backward, and she had a moment to breathe before another took its place. This one was smarter. It feinted left, and when she swung, it dodged and came in low, its jaws snapping shut inches from her throat. She stumbled backward, lost her footing on the narrow walkway, and fell. The drop wasn't far, maybe 8 feet, but she landed badly. Pain exploded through her ankle, and her sword skittered away across the mud. The rogue landed beside her, stalking close with death in its eyes. Elara tried to shift, called to her wolf with every ounce of strength she had. But the bond damage had left her weak, and her wolf was too traumatized, too hurt to respond. She was going to die. Less than 3 days into her exile, she was going to be torn apart by a rogue wolf in the mud of some forgotten outpost. The rogue crouched to spring, and then something massive and golden slammed into it from the side. Elara blinked, trying to process what she was seeing. A wolf, but not like the rogues. This one was bigger, more muscular. Its golden fur pristine even in the rain and mud. It moved with lethal precision, its jaws finding the rogue's throat and tearing. The rogue collapsed, dead before it hit the ground. The golden wolf turned to her, and even in its animal form, she recognized those eyes. Gold like melted coins, like the mysterious stranger from the ceremony. The wolf shifted, the transformation so smooth and fast it barely seemed to happen. One moment, fur and fangs. The next, a man kneeling in the mud, completely naked and completely unbothered by it. You, Elara breathed. He smiled, and it transformed his entire face from cold marble to something warm and alive. We meet again, Elara Thorn. Around them, the battle was ending. The rogues who hadn't died were retreating back into the forest, and the outpost's defenders were checking their wounded. The man stood, still naked, still smiling, and offered her his hand. Can you walk? She tried to put weight on her ankle and hissed in pain. I don't think so. Then allow me. He scooped her up like she weighed nothing, cradling her against his chest. His skin was hot, almost feverish, and she could feel the rapid beat of his heart. Who are you? She asked as he carried her toward the medical building. My name is Caspian. Just Caspian? His smile widened. For now. He pushed through the door of the medical building, which was already crowded with wounded. A healer looked up, saw Caspian, and immediately paled. Your Highness, you shouldn't be. She needs attention, Caspian interrupted, setting Elara gently on an empty cot. The ankle is injured, possibly broken. Your Highness. The words echoed in Elara's head as the healer rushed forward, as other staff members stopped what they were doing to stare, as the reality of the situation slowly crystallized. The symbol on his handkerchief, the way the guards had reacted, the casual authority in his voice. You're the Crown Prince, she whispered. Caspian looked down at her, his gold eyes warm. I am. And you, Elara Thorn, just saved yourself by not dying in your first battle. Congratulations. Then he walked away, still naked, still smiling, leaving Elara with a sprained ankle and the dawning realization that her life had just gotten infinitely more complicated. The healers confirmed that her ankle was badly sprained but not broken. They wrapped it, gave her something bitter to drink for the pain, and told her to stay off it for at least 3 days. Elara lay in the cot, staring at the ceiling of the medical building and trying to make sense of the last few hours. The Crown Prince had saved her. The same man who'd found her crying in the gardens, who'd given her his handkerchief, who'd told her to run. Why was he here? Crown Princes didn't visit border outposts. They stayed in their palaces, surrounded by guards and advisors and comfort. You're thinking too loud. She turned her head to find a young woman in a healer's robe standing beside her cot. The woman had kind eyes and a gentle smile, and she was carrying a tray with bread and soup. You need to eat, the healer said, setting the tray on a small table. Battle burns energy even if you don't fight much. Thank you. Elara struggled to sit up, wincing as her ankle protested. The healer helped arrange pillows behind her back. I'm Maya. I run the medical unit here. Elara. I know. Maya's smile turned sympathetic. Word travels fast at the outpost. Everyone knows about the Omega who got rejected by Damon Blackthorn and survived her first rogue attack in the same week. Of course they did. Elara's humiliation was probably entertainment for the whole borderlands by now. I'm sure they're all very amused, she said bitterly. Actually, most are impressed. We lost 2 experienced fighters tonight, but all 6 of the new exiles survived. That's rare. Maya sat on the edge of the cot. And between you and me, anyone who can catch the Crown Prince's attention is someone worth knowing. There it was. The real reason for the kindness. I didn't catch his attention, Elara said. He just happened to be there when I was attacked. Happened to be there? Elara, the Crown Prince doesn't happen to be anywhere. He's here on purpose, and from what I saw, he's been watching you specifically. That's ridiculous. We barely met. Maya's expression turned knowing. The heart doesn't care about logic. Neither does the bond. I don't have a bond. It was rejected. With Damon, yes, But bonds can form with more than one person, especially if the first one is severed violently. Maya leaned closer, her voice dropping. I'm not saying that's what's happening. I'm just saying, pay attention. The Crown Prince is not known for his kindness to strangers. Before Elara could respond, the door to the medical building burst open. Commander Reeves strode in, her expression thunderous. Out! She barked at Maya. Now! The healer fled without argument. Reeves approached Elara's cot, her scarred face hard. I'm only going to say this once, so listen carefully. I don't care who you know or who's taken an interest in you. In my outpost, you follow my rules. You train, you fight, you pull your weight, or you die. Understood? Yes, ma'am. The Crown Prince requested you be given light duty for 3 days while your ankle heals. After that, you're back on full rotation. Reeves's eyes narrowed. And if I find out you're using royal connections to get special treatment, I'll make your life so miserable you'll wish the rogues had killed you. I won't, ma'am. I don't even know why I don't care why. Just remember what I said. Reeves left, and Elara was alone with her soup and her confusion and a growing certainty that she'd somehow stumbled into something much bigger than a simple exile. 3 days passed in a blur of healing and observation. Elara's ankle improved slowly, and Maya proved to be not just a healer but a valuable source of information. Through her, Elara learned that Caspian had been at the outpost for 2 weeks, that he fought alongside the regular soldiers during rogue attacks, that he asked questions about every exile who arrived and seemed particularly interested in those who'd been unjustly sentenced. She learned that the borderlands were even more dangerous than she'd imagined, that rogue attacks were increasing in frequency and violence, that some believed the rogues were being organized by someone powerful and malicious. She learned that the Crown Prince was unmarked, that despite being 32 years old, he'd never claimed a mate, and that this was a source of great concern for the royal court. And she learned, through careful eavesdropping, that Caspian had specifically requested information about her case, about her rejection, about Damon Blackthorn. On the 4th day, Maya cleared her to return to light training. Elara joined the other exiles in the training yard, a muddy rectangle surrounded by weapon racks and training dummies. Commander Reeves was already there, along with a grizzled older wolf who Maya had identified as Master Sergeant Cord. Line up, Reeves commanded. The 6 exiles formed a ragged line. Over the past few days, Elara had learned their names and stories. The young beta was called Finn, exiled for stealing food to feed his family. There was an older woman named Vera who'd spoken out against pack corruption. 2 brothers, identical twins with matching scars, who'd been caught fighting in wolf form during a sacred ceremony. And a quiet girl maybe a year younger than Elara named Sophie, whose crime was being born to rogue parents despite never having lived outside pack law. All of them broken. All of them discarded. Today you learn the basics, Cord announced, his voice like gravel. How to hold a weapon. How to move in formation. How to not die like idiots. The training was brutal. Cord showed no mercy, barking corrections and insults with equal enthusiasm. Elara's injured ankle throbbed, but she gritted her teeth and pushed through, determined not to show weakness. At midday, Reeves called a break. Elara collapsed against the wall, her muscles screaming, her throat dry. Sophie sank down beside her, equally exhausted. Does it get easier? Sophie asked quietly. I don't know. I hope so. You're the one the Crown Prince saved. It wasn't a question. Elara nodded, too tired to deny it. Why do you think he did that? I have no idea. Sophie was quiet for a moment, then said, My mother used to tell me that the moon goddess works in mysterious ways, that sometimes the worst moments of our lives are just setups for the best ones. Your mother sounds optimistic. She was killed by rogues when I was 8. Sophie's voice was flat, factual. But I still believe she was right. We're here for a reason, Elara. Maybe not a good reason, but a reason. Before Elara could respond, a commotion erupted near the outpost gates. Wolves were gathering, pointing toward the tree line where a rider was approaching at full gallop. The rider wore royal colors, red and gold. And as they got closer, Elara could see the official seal on their saddle. A messenger from the capital. The rider dismounted in the courtyard, immediately surrounded by guards and officers. Elara couldn't hear what was being said, but she could see the tension in everyone's postures, could feel the shift in the air. Something important was happening. Commander Reeves dismissed the training session abruptly, and the exiles were herded back toward the barracks. What do you think that's about? Finn wondered aloud. Nothing good, Vera said. Messengers from the capital never bring good news to places like this. They found out an hour later when Reeves called an assembly in the main hall. Every wolf at the outpost crammed into the space, maybe 200 fighters total. Reeves stood on a raised platform, her expression grim. Listen up, she began. I've just received word from the capital. There's been an attack on the eastern border station. 50 wolves dead. The entire outpost destroyed. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. The eastern station was larger than Outpost 7. Better defended. The attack was coordinated, Reeves continued. Multiple rogue packs working together, led by someone with tactical training. This wasn't random violence. This was war. War. The word hung heavy in the air. As a result, all border outposts are going to high alert. Patrols are doubled, night watches tripled. Every able-bodied wolf will be expected to fight. Reeves's eyes swept the room. That includes the exiles. More murmurs. Elara felt her stomach drop. Furthermore, Reeves said, the Crown Prince has requested volunteers for a special mission. He's putting together a task force to investigate the attack, to hunt down whoever organized it. It's dangerous work, probably a death sentence for most who go. Silence now. No one wanted to volunteer for a suicide mission. However, Reeves added, those who survive and succeed will be granted full pardons, clean records, reinstatement to their original packs or placement in new ones. A chance to earn back everything you lost. Everything you lost. Elara's heart began to race. A pardon would mean she could leave the borderlands, could start over somewhere new, could escape the shadow of her rejection. But it would also mean walking into almost certain death. Think it over, Reeves said. The prince wants answers by tomorrow morning. Dismissed. The crowd dispersed, wolves talking in low, urgent voices. Elara walked outside, needing air, needing space to think. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and red that looked too much like fire. You're considering it. She spun to find Caspian standing a few feet away, his gold eyes reflecting the sunset. He was dressed simply, leather pants and a loose shirt, no crown or royal regalia to mark his status. I don't know, she admitted. It's suicide, but it's also a chance. It is suicide, he agreed, moving closer. I won't lie to you about that. Whoever organized the attack on the Eastern Station is smart and ruthless. Most of the task force won't come back. Then why are you organizing it? Because someone needs to stop this before more wolves die. And because the best way to catch a predator is to make yourself prey and wait for them to strike. His smile was sharp and dangerous. I'll be leading the task force personally. Of course he would. Crown princes didn't ask others to take risks they wouldn't take themselves. I'm thinking of volunteering, Elara said, surprising herself with the words. Caspian studied her for a long moment. Why? Because I have nothing left to lose. Because staying here means dying slowly instead of quickly. Because maybe your mother was right. My mother. Sophie's mother, I mean. She said the worst moments are setups for the best ones. Elara met his eyes. My worst moment was being rejected in front of everyone I knew. Maybe the best one is earning my freedom back. Or maybe the best one is staying alive, Caspian countered. There's no shame in choosing survival, Elara. There's no honor in it either. He laughed, surprised and genuine. You sound like a soldier. I sound like someone with nothing left to lose. They stood in silence for a moment, the sunset fading to twilight around them. Finally, Caspian said, if you volunteer, I'll put you in my squad. I can't promise you'll survive, but I can promise you'll have the best chance possible. Why would you do that? Because when I found you in the gardens, crying after being rejected by a fool, I saw something in you, strength hidden under pain, potential buried under fear. He stepped closer, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his body. And because when you saved yourself from that rogue instead of giving up, you proved me right. Elara's breath caught. I didn't save myself. You did. I killed the rogue. You stayed conscious, stayed fighting, stayed alive until help arrived. Those are 3 things most trained warriors fail to do. His hand came up, almost touching her face before he let it drop. Volunteer if you want to, Elara. But do it for yourself. Not because you think you have to prove something to me or to anyone else. He walked away, leaving her alone with the darkening sky and a decision that could change everything. She volunteered at dawn. 8 other wolves stepped forward alongside her, including Finn and Sophie. The twins stayed behind, as did Vera, all of them choosing survival over the slim chance at freedom. Elara couldn't blame them. Caspian addressed the volunteers in the courtyard, his voice carrying authority and confidence. We leave in 2 days. Use that time to train, to prepare, to make peace with whatever gods you pray to. This mission is going to be hell, and not all of us will come back. But those who do will be legends. Training for the mission was different from the regular drills. Caspian personally oversaw their preparation, pushing them harder than Cord ever had, demanding perfection in every movement. He was a brilliant teacher, patient when they struggled but ruthless when they slacked. Elara found herself improving rapidly under his instruction, her wolf growing stronger as her confidence increased. On the second evening, as the others were resting, Caspian called her aside. Walk with me, he said. They left the outpost, following a narrow path into the forest. The trees were thick here, blocking out most of the remaining daylight. Elara's wolf stirred nervously, but she trusted Caspian enough to follow. I need to tell you something, he said as they walked, about why I'm really here. I thought you were investigating the rogue attacks. I am, but that's not the only reason. He paused, turning to face her. 3 weeks ago, I attended a crimson ceremony at the Mooncrest Pack. I was there in disguise, observing, looking for potential allies among the younger alphas. Elara's heart began to pound. I saw a young Omega get publicly rejected by an alpha heir, Caspian continued. Saw her humiliated, saw her bond broken, saw her collapse in pain, and I saw the watching wolves applaud. Why are you telling me this? Because when I found you in the gardens afterward, I recognized you, and I made a decision. His gold eyes were intense, burning. I'm going to destroy Daemon Blackthorn. I'm going to dismantle his power, expose his cruelty, and make sure he never hurts another wolf the way he hurt you. The words hit like physical blows. You can't. He's a future alpha. He's a bully and a coward, and the kingdom would be better off without him. Caspian's voice was hard now, cold with fury. I've been investigating him, and what I found is worse than I imagined. The rejected Omegas, the disappeared wolves, the covered-up deaths. He's not fit to lead, and I'm going to prove it. Elara's mind reeled. If you're caught, I won't be. I'm very good at what I do. He smiled, sharp and dangerous. And you're going to help me. Me? How? By surviving this mission. By becoming strong. By showing everyone that the weak Omega Daemon rejected was worth 100 of him. Caspian's hand came up to cup her face, his thumb brushing her cheek. You're going to be my proof that the system is broken, Elara. That rejecting wolves for being different is wrong. That strength comes in forms the old laws don't recognize. It was too much, too fast. Elara pulled back, her head spinning. I can't be your symbol. I'm barely surviving myself. Then survive better. His voice softened. I'm not asking you to fight my battles, Elara. I'm asking you to fight your own and let me help. That's all. Why? Why do you care? Because, he stopped, seemed to struggle with the words. Because when I saw you in that hall, broken and bleeding and still trying to stand with dignity, I saw myself. 10 years ago, before I was crown prince, when I was just another royal bastard fighting for scraps of my father's attention. You're not a bastard. Not officially. But there are many ways to be illegitimate, many ways to be unwanted. His expression turned distant, haunted. My father had 5 sons. I'm the only one who survived to adulthood. And every day I wonder if he wishes it had been one of the others. Elara understood then. The loneliness in his eyes, the desperate need to prove himself, the anger at systems that judged worth by birth rather than character. They were the same, she and this crown prince. Both fighting to be seen, to be valued, to be loved by a world that had decided they weren't enough. I'll do it, she said quietly. I'll survive. I'll get stronger. And I'll help you however I can. Caspian's smile transformed his face, made him look younger and less burdened. Thank you. He kissed her forehead, gentle and brief, and then they walked back to the outpost in silence. Behind them, the forest whispered secrets in the wind, and somewhere in the darkness, enemies they hadn't yet met were planning violence. The mission would begin tomorrow, and Elara had no idea if she'd survive it. But for the first time since her rejection, she had something worth surviving for. I can see you're hooked now. The story's getting intense, the stakes are rising, and you need to know what happens next. Hit that subscribe button because Elara's journey is about to get darker, more dangerous, and more emotional than you can imagine. Drop a comment and tell me. Do you think she'll survive the mission? Do you think Caspian's plan will work? Let's talk about it. The task force departed at dawn. 9 wolves moving through the forest in tight formation. Caspian led, his golden wolf massive and intimidating even among the larger members of the group. Behind him, Elara ran in her smaller form, keeping pace despite her wolf-size disadvantage. Finn and Sophie flanked her, while the other 5 volunteers spread out in a protective pattern. They were heading toward the ruins of the eastern border station, a 3-day journey through increasingly hostile territory. The first day passed without incident. They moved fast, stopping only briefly to hunt and rest. Caspian set a punishing pace, testing their endurance, and Elara refused to be the one who slowed them down. That night, they made camp in a small clearing. No fire, no unnecessary noise. Just 9 wolves huddled together for warmth while guards rotated through watch shifts. Elara had first watch alongside a tall alpha named Garrick. They sat in silence for the first hour, listening to the forest sounds, their eyes scanning for threats. Finally, Garrick spoke. You're the rejected Omega. It wasn't a question, but Elara answered anyway. Yes. Daemon Blackthorn's an idiot. She looked at him, surprised. You know him? Knew him. We trained together as youths. He was always cruel, always looking for ways to hurt others. Got worse as he got older. Garrick's expression was hard. I'm not surprised he rejected you. I'm surprised it took the crown prince this long to do something about it. What do you mean? Caspian's been watching the Blackthorn twins for years, gathering evidence, building a case. He doesn't move until he's certain, but when he does, he's ruthless. Garrick smiled grimly. Your rejection might have been the final piece he needed. They fell back into silence, but Elara's mind churned with questions. How long had Caspian been planning this? What exactly had the Blackthorn twins done that warranted the crown prince's personal attention? And where did she fit into all of it beyond being a convenient symbol? The second day brought rain, heavy and cold, that turned the forest floor to mud and made tracking difficult. They pressed on anyway, Caspian pushing them harder, aware that time was critical. Late in the afternoon, they found the first signs of the attack. Claw marks on trees, deep and deliberate. Scent markers that stank of rogue wolves and something else, something chemical and wrong. And finally, scattered across a small clearing, the bodies. 5 wolves, all of them torn apart with savage efficiency. Elara's stomach churned, but she forced herself to look, to catalog the details. These wolves had died fighting, their claws extended, their jaws still locked in final snarls. This was a message, Caspian said, examining one of the bodies. They wanted these wolves found. Why? Sophie asked, her voice small. To spread fear, to show that even trained warriors can't stop them. Caspian stood, his expression grim. We're close to the station. Be ready for anything. They reached the ruins at dusk. The eastern border station had been impressive once, a fortress of stone and timber designed to withstand siege. Now it was rubble and ash, the walls collapsed, the buildings burned. Elara counted at least 40 bodies in the courtyard alone, many of them charred beyond recognition. The smell of death was overwhelming, and her wolf whimpered in distress. "Spread out," Caspian commanded. "Look for survivors, for clues, for anything that might tell us who did this." They spent an hour searching through the ruins, but found nothing useful. No survivors, no clear evidence of who had led the attack, just destruction and death. Elara was examining what looked like the remains of an armory when she heard Sophie scream. She ran toward the sound, her heart pounding, and found Sophie standing at the edge of a crater that hadn't been there before. The ground had been torn apart, leaving a hole maybe 20 feet across and just as deep. At the bottom of the crater, impaled on broken timbers, was something that made Elara's blood run cold. A wolf, but not a normal one. This creature was massive, easily twice the size of Caspian's golden form. Its fur was black as midnight, and even in death, its presence radiated wrongness. "What is that?" Finn breathed, coming up beside them. Caspian appeared, his expression horrified. "That's impossible." "What is it?" Elara asked. "An ancient." Caspian's voice was hollow. "The old bloodlines, the ones that were supposed to be extinct. They were hunted to near extinction centuries ago because they couldn't control their wolves, couldn't balance their human and animal sides. They went mad, became monsters. But if they're extinct, they're supposed to be." Caspian's jaw was tight. Someone's been breeding them, training them, creating an army of unstoppable killers. The implications hit like a landslide. An army of ancient wolves could destroy kingdoms, could reduce the current power structures to ash and blood. "We need to get back to the capital," Garrick said urgently. "Need to warn the king." "No." Caspian's voice was hard. "We need to find out who's behind this first. If we go back now, whoever it is will go to ground and we'll lose our chance." "But your highness." "I said no." Caspian turned to face them all. "We track them. We find their base. We gather enough evidence that no one can deny what's happening. Then we go to the capital." It was a gamble, a dangerous one, but Elara could see the logic. Without proof, without absolute certainty, the king might not believe them, might dismiss it as exaggeration or fear. "How do we track them?" Sophie asked. "The same way you track any wolf. Follow the scent markers. Find their territory." Caspian looked around the ruined station. "But not tonight. Tonight we rest, we process what we've seen, and we prepare for tomorrow." They made camp in the least damaged building, a stone structure that had somehow survived the fire. No one slept well. Elara kept seeing the ancient's body, kept imagining what it must have looked like alive and hunting. In the darkest part of the night, she slipped outside, needing air. Caspian was there, sitting on a broken wall and staring at the stars. "Can't sleep?" he asked without looking at her. "Too much in my head." "Same." He patted the wall beside him. "Join me." She climbed up, settling next to him. Their shoulders touched, and even that small contact sent warmth through her chilled body. "Are you scared?" she asked quietly. Terrified. His honesty surprised her. If someone's breeding ancients, if they have an army, we might be looking at the end of the kingdom as we know it. Then why are we here? Why risk 9 lives when we could warn the capital? "Because 9 lives don't matter if the kingdom falls." Caspian's voice was tired, older than his years. "Because I'm crown prince, and protecting the kingdom is my job even if it kills me. And because if I run now, I'll never forgive myself." Elara understood that. The need to face fear head-on, to prove you weren't the coward people thought you were. "Your mother's necklace," Caspian said, gesturing to the silver chain visible above her collar. "Does it mean something to you?" "It's all I have left of her. She died when I was 7. "I'm sorry." "Don't be. She was happy when she was alive, and that matters more than how long she lived." Elara touched the necklace, feeling the familiar weight. "She used to tell me I was special, that the moon goddess had plans for me. I thought she was just being kind. Maybe she was being truthful. How can I be special? I'm weak. I'm small. You're here." Caspian turned to look at her, his gold eyes intense. "You volunteered for a suicide mission when you could have stayed safe. You've kept pace with wolves twice your size for 2 days straight. You looked at an ancient and didn't run screaming. Elara, you might be the strongest person I know." "That's not true." "It is. Strength isn't about size or power or how fast you can shift. It's about what you do when you're terrified, when everything in you screams to give up. And you never give up." His hand found hers, warm and solid. "That's real strength." Tears pricked at her eyes, but she blinked them back. "Thank you." They sat in silence for a while longer, holding hands and watching the stars, and Elara felt something shift inside her. Not a mate bond, nothing that dramatic. Just a connection, a recognition of like calling to like. Maybe they would die tomorrow. Maybe they'd find the army of ancients and be torn apart. But tonight, sitting on a broken wall with the crown prince's hand in hers, Elara felt less alone than she had in years. And that, she decided, was worth fighting for. The third day brought them deeper into rogue territory than most pack wolves ever ventured. The scent markers were everywhere now, overwhelming and aggressive. These rogues wanted everyone to know this was their land, that trespassers would be dealt with violently. Caspian led them carefully, using terrain to mask their approach, avoiding open areas where they'd be vulnerable. They moved in silence, communicating through pack bonds and subtle gestures. Around midday they found it, a valley hidden between two mountain ridges, accessible only through a narrow pass. And in that valley, a camp that made the border outposts look like children's toys. Hundreds of structures organized in military precision. Training grounds where wolves sparred in both human and animal forms. Armories stocked with weapons. And in the center, a massive stone building that radiated authority. But it was what Elara saw in the training grounds that made her heart stop. Ancients. Dozens of them, maybe more, all being put through coordinated drills by handlers in dark armor. Moon goddess preserve us, Garrick whispered. We need to leave, another volunteer said urgently. Need to warn. Wait. Caspian's voice was tense. Look at the handlers. Their armor. Elara focused, and her breath caught. The armor bore a symbol, etched in silver on each breastplate. A moon split by a sword. That's impossible, Sophie breathed. That's the Blackthorn family crest. The implications crashed down on them all at once. The Blackthorn family was breeding ancients. The future alphas of the Mooncrest Pack were building an army designed to conquer, not defend. Damon and Kale were traitors to the crown. We need to document this, Caspian said, his voice deadly calm. We need proof that will hold up in the king's court. How? We can't exactly walk down there and start taking notes. No, but we can observe from here, count numbers, identify key figures. Caspian's eyes were hard. And then we can infiltrate. That's insane, Garrick said. That's necessary. Caspian looked at each of them in turn. I need 3 volunteers. The rest will stay here, keep watch, and if we don't return in 12 hours, run back to the capital with everything you've seen. It was a suicide mission within a suicide mission. Elara stepped forward before she could think better of it. I'll go. Elara, no. Sophie started. I have to. She met Caspian's eyes. Damon rejected me because I was weak. I need to see this through. Finn and Garrick volunteered as well, and the plan was set. They would wait until nightfall, then infiltrate the camp disguised as rogue wolves. They'd gather intelligence, look for documents or maps, anything that would prove the Blackthorn's involvement beyond doubt. And then they'd get out somehow and bring the kingdom down on these traitors. As the sun set and they prepared to descend into the valley, Elara felt Caspian's hand on her shoulder. Stay close to me, he said quietly. No matter what happens, don't get separated. I won't. And Elara? If things go wrong, if we're captured. His expression was pained. Run. Don't try to save me. Just run and get the information back to the capital. I can't promise that. Promise anyway. She wanted to argue, wanted to tell him she wouldn't abandon him the way everyone had abandoned her. But his gold eyes were pleading, and she understood. He needed to know that even if he died, the mission would succeed. I promise, she lied. They descended into the valley as night claimed the sky, for wolves walking into hell with nothing but courage and desperation to protect them. And somewhere in the capital, Damon Blackthorn smiled at a party, completely unaware that his world was about to end. The infiltration was almost too easy at first. The rogue camp was massive enough that 4 more wolves didn't raise immediate suspicion. They'd rolled in mud to mask their scents, had adopted the slouching posture of rogues who'd abandoned pack discipline, and moved with the casual confidence of wolves who belonged. Elara's heart hammered in her chest, but her face remained calm. Beside her, Caspian navigated the camp with the ease of someone who'd done this before, his eyes constantly scanning for threats and opportunities. The stone building at the center was their target. If there were documents, maps, proof of the Blackthorn's involvement, that's where they'd be. They approached from the east, using shadows and the general chaos of a camp settling in for the night as cover. 2 guards stood at the main entrance, but a smaller door on the side appeared unguarded. Too convenient, Elara's instincts screamed, but they had no choice. Caspian tried the handle. It opened silently, and they slipped inside. The interior was dimly lit by torches mounted on stone walls. Hallways branched off in multiple directions, but Caspian seemed to know where he was going. He led them deeper into the building, past empty rooms and closed doors, until they reached what looked like an office. Documents covered a large desk, maps pinned to walls, lists of names and numbers that made Elara's blood run cold. This is it? Caspian breathed, moving to the desk and starting to sort through papers. Garrick watched the door. Finn, help me document this. Elara, check those maps. Elara approached the wall, her eyes widening as she took in the scope of what she was seeing. The maps showed the entire kingdom, with specific territories marked in red. Border stations, including Outpost 7. Major pack lands, including the Mooncrest territory. And most damning, a route drawn from this valley straight to the capital, with notes about guard rotations and weak points in the city's defenses. This wasn't just an army. This was an invasion plan. Caspian, you need to see this. He came to her side, and she watched his expression harden as he took in the maps. They're planning to attack the capital, he said, his voice hollow. Within the month, if these timelines are accurate. Can we stop them? If we get this information back to my father, yes. He can mobilize the royal army, reinforce the defenses, arrest the Blackthorns before they can act. Caspian began rolling up the most important maps. We need to move now. A voice from the doorway froze them in place. I'm afraid I can't let you do that. Elara spun to find a tall figure silhouetted in the entrance. As he stepped into the torchlight, her heart plummeted. Kale Blackthorn stood before them, his silver eyes cold and calculating. Your Highness, Kale said, inclining his head mockingly. What an unexpected pleasure. I didn't realize you'd taken such an interest in our little project. Kale. Caspian's voice was hard, his body shifting into a fighting stance. I should have known you were involved. The quiet twin, the observant one. Always watching, always planning. Someone has to do the real work while my brother plays at being cruel. Kale's smile was sharp. Did you really think Damon had the brains to organize something like this? He can barely manage his own territory, let alone plan a coup. A coup? Caspian's hand went to the blade at his belt. So you admit it. Why not? You're not leaving here alive anyway. Kale's eyes shifted to Elara, and something flickered in his expression. Hello again, Elara. I see you survived the borderlands after all. No thanks to you, she spat. Actually, it was precisely thanks to me. Who do you think ensured you were assigned to Outpost 7 instead of somewhere truly deadly? Who made sure Commander Reeves didn't work you to death? His smile widened. I've been watching over you, little Omega, making sure you survived long enough to be useful. Useful for what? For this, obviously. Crown Prince to the rescue. Saving the rejected Omega. Building his case against the cruel Blackthorn twins. Kale's laugh was cold. Did you think any of this was coincidence? I knew Caspian would come for you eventually. He's too noble, too righteous, too predictable. All I had to do was wait. Elara's mind reeled. Everything had been manipulation from her exile to this moment. She'd been a pawn in a game she hadn't even known she was playing. Why tell us this? Caspian demanded. Why not just kill us? Because I want you to understand how thoroughly you've lost before you die. Kale gestured, and guards poured into the room from multiple entrances. 20 wolves, all of them armed, all of them moving with military precision. Because I want you to know that every step you took, every choice you made, led you exactly where I wanted you. Garrick and Finn had their weapons drawn, but they were hopelessly outnumbered. Elara's wolf howled in terror, urging her to run, but there was nowhere to go. Kill the soldiers, Kale ordered, but take the prince and the Omega alive. My brother will want to see them before they die. The guards advanced, and Caspian's hand found Elara's. Remember your promise, he said quietly. Then everything exploded into violence. Caspian shifted, his golden wolf lunging at the nearest guards with lethal precision. Garrick and Finn followed suit, their wolves smaller but fierce. The room became a chaos of teeth and claws and screaming. Elara couldn't shift, knew her wolf would be useless in this fight. Instead, she grabbed a blade from the desk and went low, stabbing at legs and tendons, doing whatever damage she could. One guard went down, then another, but there were too many, and her allies were taking damage. She saw Finn's wolf collapse, blood pouring from a wound in his side. Saw Garrick being overwhelmed by 3 guards at once. Caspian was a force of nature, taking down guards left and right, but even he couldn't fight forever. Kale watched it all with detached interest, making no move to help his guards or intervene, just observing, calculating, planning his next move. Elara saw an opening. Kale was standing near the door, his attention on Caspian. If she could get past him, could make it to the hallway. She ran, her small size and speed working in her favor. Kale noticed too late, his hand reaching for her but missing by inches. She burst into the hallway and kept running, her breath ragged, her heart threatening to explode. Behind her, she heard Kale shouting orders, heard guards being dispatched to chase her down. I'm sorry, she thought toward Caspian. I'm sorry I couldn't save you, but she could still complete the mission, could still get the truth back to the capital. She just had to survive. Elara ran through the labyrinthine corridors of the stone building, her breath coming in ragged gasps. Behind her, the sounds of pursuit grew louder. Boots pounding against stone, voices shouting commands, the distinctive scrape of claws on rock as some guards shifted to hunt her more effectively. She had no idea where she was going. The building was massive and every hallway looked the same. Left, right, upstairs, downstairs. She made choices based purely on instinct and desperation. A guard appeared ahead, blocking her path. Elara didn't slow down. She feinted left, and when he lunged that direction, she ducked right and slashed with her stolen blade. Connected with his thigh, and he went down with a howl. She kept running. Another hallway, another turn, and suddenly she burst out into night air. A side exit opening onto a narrow ledge that overlooked the valley. Below her, the rogue camp sprawled in all directions, hundreds of structures and thousands of wolves. No escape that way. Footsteps behind her. Close now, getting closer. Elara looked around desperately and spotted a drainage pipe running down the side of the building. It was narrow, probably designed for water rather than people, but it was her only option. She sheathed the blade and grabbed the pipe, swinging her body over the ledge. Her hands screamed in protest as she slid down, the metal rough and unforgiving. Halfway down, her grip failed, and she fell the rest of the way, landing hard in a pile of refuse. Pain exploded through her already injured ankle worse than before. Definitely broken this time, she thought distantly, struggling to her feet. The sounds of pursuit were coming from above now. They'd seen where she went. Elara limped into the camp proper, pulling her hood up and hunching her shoulders, trying to blend in with the other rogues. Her heart was pounding so hard she was sure everyone could hear it, but no one paid her any attention. Just another rogue moving through the night. Nothing unusual. She made it 3 blocks before someone grabbed her arm. "You're bleeding," a gruff voice said. Elara looked down and realized he was right. Her hands were torn from the pipe, leaving a trail of blood that anyone could follow. "Training accident," she lied, trying to pull away. The rogue's grip tightened. "You smell wrong. Too clean." "Too." She drove her blade up into his ribs before he could finish the sentence. His eyes went wide and he collapsed. Elara stumbled backward, horrified. She'd killed someone. Not a rogue attacking her. Not an enemy in battle, but someone who'd just been trying to help in his own rough way. No time for guilt. Guards were shouting somewhere close, spreading out, searching systematically. She couldn't stay in the camp. Needed to get to the forest, to the valley's edge, to anywhere that wasn't here. Her broken ankle made every step agony, but she forced herself to move. Past training grounds, past barracks, past wolves who looked at her with mild curiosity but no alarm. The forest was close now, maybe 50 yards. If she could just... "There!" someone shouted. The small one by the eastern fence. The illusion of safety shattered. Elara ran, or tried to, her ankle screaming in protest. Behind her, guards converged. Their wolves faster and stronger. She wasn't going to make it. A massive gray wolf slammed into her from the side, driving her to the ground. The impact knocked the air from her lungs, and she tasted blood. More wolves surrounded her, their growls rumbling through the night. "Don't kill her," one guard said, shifting back to human form. "Kale wants her alive." They dragged her to her feet, her broken ankle unable to support any weight. She tried to fight, tried to shift, but her wolf was too damaged, too weak. They hauled her back toward the stone building, and Elara felt what little hope she'd had died. She'd failed. Failed Caspian, failed the kingdom, failed herself. The guards threw her into a cell deep in the building's basement. Stone walls on all sides, a single barred window near the ceiling, no furniture except a bucket in the corner. Elara collapsed against the wall, her body giving out completely. Every injury she'd accumulated over the past days seemed to demand attention at once. Her ankle, her hands, her ribs where the rogue had hit her. Time passed in a haze of pain and semi-consciousness. She might have slept, might have just lost time to shock. When the cell door finally opened, she couldn't have said if it had been minutes or hours. Cale Blackthorn entered, his expression calm and almost pleasant. "Elara," he said, settling onto the floor across from her like they were friends having a casual conversation. "You led my guards on quite a chase. Killed 2 of them, injured 5 more. That's impressive for someone as weak as you. Where's Caspian?" Her voice came out as a croak. "Alive, though not for much longer. My brother wanted to have a conversation with him first. Something about family honor and royal arrogance." Cale tilted his head, studying her. "I wanted to talk to you, though. Alone." "Why?" "Because you interest me. You always have." He leaned forward. "Do you know what I saw when Damon rejected you at the ceremony? I saw a wolf who took unimaginable pain and stayed standing. Who looked my brother in the eye even as her bond shattered. Who walked out with her head up despite the humiliation. And then you had me exiled to the borderlands. I had you exiled to exactly the right place at exactly the right time," Cale corrected. "Where the crown prince would find you, where he could be the hero saving the damsel, where he'd build his case against us based on righteous fury. You wanted him to come after you? I wanted him distracted. Wanted him focused on my brother's cruelty instead of my plans." Cale's smile was sharp. "Damon makes an excellent villain. Everyone believes he's capable of terrible things because he is. But no one suspects me because I'm quiet, because I'm observant, because I never draw attention. You're using your own brother." He used himself when he chose cruelty over kindness. Cale's expression hardened. Damon will be executed when the coup succeeds. He's too unstable, too sadistic to be useful in the new order. I'll weep at his trial, will beg for mercy that won't come, and everyone will see me as the tragic twin who tried to save his evil brother. The casual way he discussed fratricide made Elara's skin crawl. Why are you telling me this? She asked. Because I have a proposal. Kale leaned back. You have a choice to make, Elara. You can die with Caspian, can be executed as traitors to the new regime. Or you can live. What's the price? Your cooperation. Your support when I take the throne. Your testimony that Caspian was planning to kidnap you, that he forced you to help him spy on loyal Pax, that everything was his idea. Kale's eyes were intent. You'll be the tragic Omega who was manipulated by a power-hungry prince. The kingdom will sympathize, will embrace you, and I'll give you everything you ever wanted: power, respect, a place in the new order. It was tempting. God help her, it was tempting. A life without pain, without fear, without constantly being reminded of her weakness. What about the ancients? She asked. What about the invasion? The invasion is necessary. The kingdom is stagnant, run by weak leaders who value tradition over progress. We need new blood, new leadership. The ancients are just tools to achieve that goal. Kale spread his hands. Think about it, Elara. The pack system creates wolves like you and me, people with potential who are held back by arbitrary rules about bloodlines and strength. We could change that, could build something better. For a moment, she almost believed him, almost let herself imagine a world where weakness wasn't a death sentence, where wolves like her could thrive. Then she remembered Caspian's hand in hers, his voice saying she was the strongest person he knew. Remembered Sophie's mother's optimism, Finn's loyalty, Garrick's quiet courage. Remembered that real change didn't come from conquering and killing. It came from people choosing to be better than their worst impulses. No, she said. Kale's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Disappointment, maybe, or anger. That's unfortunate, he said, standing. I would have enjoyed having you as an ally. I'd rather die than help you. That can be arranged. He moved to the door, paused. For what it's worth, I wasn't lying about finding you interesting. In another life, we might have been friends. In another life, you might have been a good person. Kale left without responding, and Elara was alone again. She'd chosen death, chosen loyalty to a prince she barely knew over survival. By all logical measures, it was the wrong choice. But her mother had taught her that some things mattered more than survival, like integrity, like doing the right thing even when it cost everything. If she was going to die, at least she'd die as herself. Hours passed, or maybe days. Elara lost track of time in the windowless cell. Guards brought food and water periodically, but she couldn't eat. Her ankle had swollen to twice its normal size, and the pain was constant. She was drifting in and out of consciousness when the cell door opened again. Not Kale this time. Damon Blackthorne stood in the doorway, his silver eyes bright with malicious joy. Well, he said, voice dripping false sweetness. The weak little Omega who thought she could trap me. Look at you now. Elara didn't respond, didn't even look at him. What was the point? Kale said you refused his offer. Damon moved closer, crouching in front of her. Stupid. You could have lived, could have been something almost respectable. But you chose the prince who was using you instead. At least he saw me as a person, Elara said quietly. You never did. Because you're not. You're a mistake. A genetic dead end that should have been culled years ago. His hand shot out, gripping her chin and forcing her to meet his eyes. Do you know how much you disgusted me? How much my wolf howled at being matched to something so pathetic? Then you should be happy the bond's broken. Happy? Damon's laugh was sharp. I haven't slept properly since that night. My wolf won't stop crying for you. Won't stop demanding I find you and fix what I broke. It's driving me insane. Good, she thought but didn't say. Let it drive you mad. Kale says I have to kill you, Damon continued. Says it's the only way to fully break the bond, to give my wolf closure. But I think I'll take my time with it. Make you suffer the way you've made me suffer. He released her chin and stood. Tomorrow we execute the crown prince. You'll watch as we kill him, as we destroy his legend and his hope. And then, when you're completely broken, I'll end you too. Damon left, and Elara finally let herself cry. Not for herself. She'd accepted her fate. But for Caspian, who'd tried to save her and would die for it. For the kingdom that would fall to Kale's ancients. For Sophie and the other exiles who'd believed in something better. For the future that would never happen now. She cried until she had no tears left, until exhaustion claimed her, until sleep provided a brief escape from the nightmare her life had become. And somewhere in the darkness, something ancient and powerful stirred, drawn by her pain, her desperation, her absolute refusal to surrender even in the face of certain death. The moon goddess, some called it. Fate, others said. Or maybe just the universe's way of balancing scales that had tipped too far toward injustice. Whatever it was, it found Elara in that cell and decided that her story wasn't over yet. Elara woke to moonlight streaming through the high window. Impossible. The cell had been in the basement, underground, no windows except the tiny barred one near the ceiling that let in no light. But now moonlight filled the space, silver and pure and impossibly bright. She pushed herself up, wincing as her broken ankle protested. The pain was still there, but somehow distant, like it belonged to someone else. The moonlight seemed to have substance, seemed to flow like water across the stone floor. It reached her, touched her skin, and Elara gasped. Power flooded through her, ancient and vast and completely foreign. Her wolf, which had been cowering and damaged since the rejection, suddenly surged forward with a strength she'd never felt before. The shift happened without conscious thought. One moment she was human, the next she was wolf, and Elara stared at her reflection in a puddle of water. Her wolf was massive, not as large as the ancients, but easily the size of Caspian's golden form. Her fur was silver white, the color of moonlight itself, and her eyes glowed with an inner light. This wasn't possible. Wolves didn't change size, didn't suddenly gain power. Once you were weak, you stayed weak. Unless the moon goddess had intervened. Elara didn't question it, didn't waste time wondering why. She just accepted the gift and moved. Her new strength made breaking through the cell door trivial. The wood splintered under her claws, and she was in the hallway, moving fast and silent through the building. She could smell Caspian now, could track his scent to a cell 3 levels up. Guards stood outside, but they were expecting a small, weak Omega. They weren't prepared for what Elara had become. She tore through them like paper, her jaws finding throats, her claws opening bellies. There was no mercy in her, no hesitation. These wolves had chosen their side, and that side was wrong. The cell door opened easily. Inside, Caspian lay chained to the wall, his face battered and bloody but his gold eyes still fierce. He saw her and gasped. Elara? What? How? She shifted back, quickly using a fallen guard's knife to break his chains. No time. We need to go. You're different. You're strong. I know. Moon goddess intervention or something. We can discuss theology later. She helped him stand, and he leaned on her heavily. They'd beaten him badly, possibly broken bones. Can you shift? I think so. Do it. We're running. They both shifted, Caspian's golden wolf matching her silver one in size and power. Together they burst from the cell, moving as one unit. Alarms were sounding now. The entire building was waking up, guards converging from all directions. They fought through hallways slick with blood, their wolves working in perfect synchronization. Elara had never felt anything like it. The absolute trust, the seamless coordination, the sense that they were two parts of one whole. A mate bond, her wolf whispered, different from what Damon rejected. Stronger, chosen rather than fated. They reached the main entrance and burst out into the night. The rogue camp was in chaos. Wolves running in all directions. Commanders shouting orders that no one could hear over the general panic. The Valley Pass. Caspian's voice in her mind, made possible by their new bond. We need to reach the others. They ran, their wolves eating up distance with powerful strides. Behind them, The entire camp mobilized, hundreds of rogues and ancients in pursuit. An ancient cut them off, massive and black and rage incarnate. Elara didn't hesitate. She leaped, her jaws finding its throat. The group took off, moving at full speed through the forest. Behind them, the sounds of pursuit echoed from the valley. They ran for hours, until Elara's newly powerful body was exhausted, until even Caspian was stumbling. Finally, as dawn broke, they stopped in a small clearing to rest. Caspian shifted first, and Elara followed. They stood facing each other, both naked and covered in blood and breathing hard. "You came back for me," he said. "Of course I did. I told you to run, to save yourself. I'm not good at following orders." She touched his face gently, checking his injuries. "How bad are you hurt?" "I'll live, thanks to you." His hand covered hers. "What happened? How did you—" "I don't know. Moon goddess, fate, desperation. Does it matter?" "No." His other hand came up to cup her face. "Nothing matters except that we're alive." "We're alive," she agreed. "And we have proof of the coup. And we're going to stop them. We're going to try." Caspian pulled her close, resting his forehead against hers. "Whatever happens next, I need you to know something." "What?" "When I saw you in that garden, broken and rejected, I saw a future I wanted. Not because you were weak and needed saving, but because you were strong and deserved better. And every moment since has proven me right." His voice was thick with emotion. "You're extraordinary, Elara. You're everything the kingdom should be but isn't. Brave and kind and unwilling to compromise your values even when it costs everything." "Caspian, I'm not finished." He pulled back enough to meet her eyes. "The bond we have now, the one that formed while we fought our way out of hell together, I want to keep it. Want to make it permanent. Want to stand before the kingdom and claim you as my mate." Elara's heart stopped. "You can't. I'm nobody. You're the woman I love. The one who saved my life, who chose death over dishonor, who became powerful enough to tear through ancients because she refused to give up." He smiled, tired and beautiful. "You're the future queen of this kingdom, if you'll have me." "That's insane." "Probably. So is everything else we've done." His thumb brushed her cheek. "What do you say, Elara Thorn? Will you mate bond with me? Will you stand beside me when we face my father and the council and every wolf who says you're not good enough?" She should have said no. Should have been practical, should have protected herself from more pain. But practicality had never gotten her anywhere. Only courage had. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I'll mate bond with you. I'll stand beside you. I'll face the entire kingdom if I have to." Caspian kissed her then, deep and fierce and full of promise. And despite everything, the injuries, the danger, the war they'd have to win, Elara felt hope. Real, tangible hope for a future that might actually be beautiful. "You still here? Good. Because this story is far from over. We've got a coup to stop, twins to destroy, and a kingdom to save." Hit that subscribe button if you're invested in Elara and Caspian's story. Drop a comment telling me what you think will happen when they reach the capital. And stay tuned because the final confrontation is going to be epic. They reached the capital 4 days later. For days of running, of hiding from rogue patrols, of moving through territories that should have been safe but weren't anymore. The Blackthorn influence had spread further than anyone realized, and they'd had several close calls with wolves who'd been bought or blackmailed into the coup. But finally, as the sun set on the 4th day, they crested a hill and saw it. The capital city of Lunathrone, sprawling across a valley, its white stone walls gleaming in the fading light. Home to the king, the royal court, the seat of power for the entire kingdom. And currently under siege. "Moon goddess," Sophie breathed. "They're already here." Rogue forces surrounded the city. Thousands of wolves dug into positions around the walls. Siege engines had been set up, massive constructions designed to hurl stones and fire over the defenses. The Blackthorns hadn't waited for Caspian to return with his evidence. They'd moved up their timeline, had launched their invasion early. "My father's forces are holding," Caspian said, his voice tight. "But they won't last long against ancients. We need to get inside. Need to warn them about the Blackthorn's involvement. How? Garrick asked. The city's completely surrounded. There's a way. Caspian pointed to the eastern section of wall, where the siege lines were thinnest. Old Smuggler's Tunnel runs under the wall and comes up in the merchant quarter. My father had it sealed years ago, but I know how to open it. That's awfully convenient, one volunteer said suspiciously. That's because I used it as a teenager to sneak out and visit taverns I wasn't supposed to know about. Caspian's smile was brief. Crown princes aren't always obedient. They waited until full dark, then moved toward the eastern section. The rogue patrols were focused on the walls, on preventing anyone from escaping or entering obviously. They weren't watching for wolves sneaking between their lines. Elara's new strength made the approach easier. She could smell rogues from hundreds of yards away, could navigate around their positions with precision. The bond between her and Caspian hummed with shared awareness, each of them knowing instinctively where the other was. They reached the tunnel entrance, a collapsed section of stone that looked like natural debris. Caspian felt along the rocks until he found a specific stone, pressed it, and heard a click. A section of the collapse swung inward, revealing a narrow passage. In, he commanded. Quickly, they filed through one by one, and Caspian sealed the entrance behind them. The tunnel was pitch black and smelled of damp earth, but it was passable. They walked for what felt like hours, the passage gradually sloping upward. Finally, they reached another sealed entrance, this one with a wheel mechanism. Caspian spun it, and the door opened with a groan of rusted metal. They emerged in a basement of what looked like an abandoned warehouse. Above them, they could hear the sounds of a city preparing for war, orders being shouted, armor clanking, the organized chaos of an army mobilizing. We need to get to the palace, Caspian said. Stay together, stay alert. If anyone asks, you're with me and acting on royal authority. They climbed stairs and found themselves in the merchant quarter. The streets were crowded despite the late hour, wolves rushing to reinforce defenses or evacuate families to safer districts. No one paid much attention to 7 dirty, blood-stained wolves moving with purpose through the crowd. Everyone was too focused on their own survival. The palace loomed ahead, its towers rising above the city walls. Guards stood at every entrance, their expressions tense. Caspian approached the main gate, and the guards immediately knelt. Your Highness, one gasped. We thought you were dead. Not yet. I need to see my father immediately. Where is he? War room, sire. Shall I announce? No, this can't wait. They rushed through the palace, servants and guards scrambling out of their way. Elara had never been inside a royal palace before, and even in crisis, she couldn't help noticing the grandeur. Marble floors, tapestries depicting legendary battles, ceilings painted with celestial scenes. This was where Caspian lived. This was the world she'd agreed to enter. The war room was chaos. Maps covered every surface, and at least 30 wolves in military uniforms argued loudly about tactics and resources. At the center stood King Aldrich, Caspian's father. He was old, maybe 70. His fur completely gray and his face lined with age and worry. But his eyes were sharp, and his voice cut through the arguments like a blade. Enough! We hold the walls until reinforcements arrive from the northern packs. There's no other. Father, Caspian interrupted. Every head in the room turned. King Aldrich's expression cycled through shock, relief, and fury in rapid succession. Caspian, where in the goddess's name have you been? We received word you were killed in a rogue attack weeks ago. I was investigating the attacks, and I found proof of who's behind them. Caspian moved to the central table, pulling out the maps and documents they'd salvaged from the valley camp. The Blackthorn twins. They've been breeding ancients, building an army, planning a coup. Silence fell. Every wolf in the room stared at the evidence spread across the table. That's impossible, one general said finally. The Blackthorns are loyal allies. They've served the crown for generations. Look at the maps, Caspian insisted. Look at the invasion plans, the lists of ancients, the timeline. It's all there. King Aldrich examined the documents with shaking hands. His expression grew darker with each page. This can't be real, he whispered. Marcus Blackthorn is my oldest friend. His sons trained with our military, fought alongside our soldiers. His sons are traitors, Caspian said flatly, and they're leading the army besieging us right now. We don't know that, another advisor protested. The Blackthorn forces haven't arrived yet. They sent word 3 days ago that they were mobilizing to help defend the capital. Because they wanted you to wait for them, Elara said, speaking for the first time. Every eye in the room turned to her, and she felt the weight of their judgment. A small Omega, covered in blood and dirt, daring to speak in the king's war room. Caspian's hand found hers, steadying her. This is Elara Thorn, he announced. She infiltrated the Blackthorn base with me, fought her way out of captivity, and helped save my life. She speaks with my authority. King Aldrich's eyes narrowed, studying her with uncomfortable intensity. You're the Omega my son has been searching for, the one Daemon Blackthorn rejected. Yes, your majesty. And you claim his family is betraying us? I don't claim it. I witnessed it. She stepped forward despite every instinct screaming at her to show submission. Cale Blackthorn himself admitted the coup. He offered me a place in his new order if I'd testify against Prince Caspian. When I refused, his brother promised to kill me slowly. Why should we believe you? You're a rejected Omega with every reason to want revenge on the Blackthorn family. The accusation stung, but Elara held her ground. Because I have nothing to gain from lying. Because the evidence speaks for itself. And because if you wait for the Blackthorn forces to arrive, you'll find out I'm telling the truth when they open your gates from the inside and let the ancients pour through. King Aldrich looked at his son. You trust her judgment? With my life. She's proven herself a dozen times over. Caspian's voice was firm. And father, there's something else you should know. I've claimed her as my mate. We bonded during the escape, and I intend to formalize it before the kingdom. The room erupted in protest. Your Highness, that's impossible. A rejected Omega cannot become crown princess. The council will never approve. Silence. King Aldrich's roar cut through the chaos. He glared at his advisors until they subsided, then turned back to Caspian. We will discuss your mating choices after we survive the siege. For now, I want every detail of what you discovered. Leave nothing out. Caspian laid it all out. The border outpost, the ancient wolf they'd found at the ruined station, the infiltration of the valley base, the maps showing invasion routes, Cale's confession, their escape. Sophie and the other volunteers corroborated every detail, their testimonies adding weight to the accusations. By the time Caspian finished, even the skeptical advisors looked shaken. If this is true, one general said slowly, then we're facing a coordinated attack from forces inside and outside our walls. The Blackthorn troops number at least 2,000. If they turn on us in the middle of battle, we'll be slaughtered. Another finished grimly. King Aldrich stood silent for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Finally, he spoke. Send riders to intercept the Blackthorn forces. Tell them we've discovered evidence of rogue infiltration in their ranks and need them to submit to inspection before entering the city. They'll know we suspect them, an advisor warned. Good. Let them know. Let them react. Their reaction will tell us everything we need to know. The king turned to his military commander. General Thorn, I want our best archers on the walls above the western gate. If the Blackthorn forces try to force entry, I want them cut down before they reach the doors. Wait, Elara's mind stuttered. General Thorn? She looked at the man the king had addressed, a tall alpha with silver-shot hair and familiar gray eyes. He was looking back at her, his expression a mix of shock and something that might have been recognition. Elara? He whispered. The world tilted. Do you two know each other? King Aldrich demanded. The general took a step toward her, his hand reaching out then dropping as if he didn't have the right to touch her. She's my niece. My brother Marcus's daughter. No, not Marcus. Marcus was her uncle, the the drunk who'd pushed her into the ceremony and later testified against her. This man, this general in the king's war room, was her father. The father who'd disappeared when she was 3 years old. The father her mother had told her was dead. "You're alive," she said, her voice breaking. "All this time you were alive." "I had to leave," he said urgently. "Your mother, it was too dangerous for her if I stayed." "I couldn't." He stopped, seeming to realize this wasn't the time or place. "We'll talk later. Right now, we have a war to win." He was right. Personal revelations would have to wait. But Elara's world had shifted again. The foundations she'd built her understanding on cracking open to reveal new truths beneath. "The Blackthorn forces are approaching," a guard shouted from the doorway. "They're demanding entry." Everyone moved at once. Advisors rushing to windows, generals barking orders, messengers running to relay commands to the walls. Elara and Caspian followed King Aldrich to the palace's highest tower, which offered a clear view of the western gate. Below, she could see the Blackthorn army, 2,000 strong, their banners displaying the moon and sword crest. At their head rode Alpha Marcus Blackthorn himself, the twins' father, his face set in lines of grim determination. Behind the gates, the capital's defenders readied their weapons. "Open negotiations," King Aldrich commanded. "Let's see what story they tell." A herald called down from the walls. "Alpha Blackthorn, the king requires your forces submit to inspection before entry." Marcus Blackthorn's voice carried clearly in the evening air. "Inspection? We've marched 3 days to aid the crown, and you greet us with suspicion. We have intelligence suggesting rogue infiltration in your ranks. That's absurd. My wolves are loyal to the kingdom. Then you'll have no objection to proving it." Silence. Marcus was conferring with his commanders, their discussion too quiet to hear from this distance. "What are they planning?" Elara wondered aloud. "Nothing good," Caspian said grimly. Then Marcus raised his hand, and everything went to hell. The Blackthorn forces attacked the gate with coordinated precision. Battering rams appeared from wagons that had been disguised as supply carts. Archers fired volleys at the defenders on the walls. And from the rear of their formation, shapes began to emerge. Ancients. At least 20 of them, massive black wolves that radiated menace. "Goddess preserve us," King Aldrich breathed. "It's all true. Defend the gate." General Thorn, Elara's father, commanded. "Do not let them through." The defenders responded with arrows and spells, magic users calling on the elements to create barriers and weapons. The Blackthorn forces took casualties, but they kept coming, kept pushing. And then the real attack began. From within the city, explosions rocked the western district. Buildings collapsed, flames erupting into the night sky. They had wolves inside already, Caspian realized. Sleeper agents waiting for the signal. More explosions closer to the palace now. The city was under attack from within and without, and they were running out of time. "Father, we need to evacuate the civilians," Caspian urged. "Get them to the palace's interior chambers where the stone is thickest." "Do it," King Aldrich agreed. "And someone get me eyes on those internal attacks. I want to know how many traitors we're dealing with." The next hour was chaos. Elara found herself swept up in evacuation efforts, using her new strength to carry children and injured wolves to safety. Sophie worked beside her, both of them moving through smoke and flames with desperate efficiency. A building collapsed nearby, and Elara barely managed to pull a family clear before the debris buried where they'd been standing. "Thank you," the mother sobbed. "Thank you. Keep moving. Get to the palace." She turned to find more survivors and came face to face with Damon Blackthorn. He stood in the middle of the burning street, his silver eyes reflecting the flames. Blood spattered his armor, and his smile was vicious. "Hello, Elara," he purred. "Miss me?" She shifted without conscious thought, her silver wolf rising to face him. Damon shifted as well, his wolf large and dark and radiating cruel intent. They circled each other, and Elara realized with cold certainty that one of them was going to die tonight. Damon lunged first, his jaws snapping for her throat. She dodged, twisted, went for his legs. Her teeth found purchase and she tasted blood. He yelped and spun, his claws raking across her side. Pain flared, but she ignored it, pressing her attack. They fought with savage intensity, two wolves locked in combat that was about more than just battle. This was personal. This was every moment of humiliation and pain she'd suffered coming back as fury. Daemon was stronger, more experienced. But Elara was faster, more desperate, and she had nothing left to lose. She fainted left, and when he followed, she went right and up, her jaws closing on his throat. Not hard enough to kill, just enough to make him submit. Daemon went still beneath her, his wolf's eyes wide with shock and something that might have been fear. Elara could kill him, could end the wolf who'd rejected her, who'd promised to make her suffer, who'd betrayed his kingdom for power. It would be so easy. But she thought of Caspian, of his belief in justice over vengeance. Thought of the wolf she wanted to become, not the one her pain tried to create. She released him and stepped back, shifting to human form. "Go," she said coldly. "Run to your brother. Tell him I could have killed you and chose mercy. Tell him that's the difference between us." Daemon shifted as well, his hand going to his bleeding throat. For a moment, she thought he might attack again. Then he turned and ran, disappearing into the smoke. Elara shifted back and kept moving, kept helping evacuate civilians, kept doing what needed to be done. She'd won something tonight that had nothing to do with the battle. She'd proven to herself that she wasn't defined by what had been done to her. She was more than her rejection, more than her pain. She was a wolf who chose mercy when she had every right to choose violence. And that made her stronger than Daemon Blackthorn could ever be. The battle raged through the night. By dawn, the city was scarred but standing. The western gate had held, barely, and the Blackthorn forces had been pushed back with heavy casualties. The internal attacks had been suppressed, the sleeper agents captured or killed. But the cost had been terrible. Hundreds dead, thousands injured, entire districts reduced to ash. Elara found Caspian in the war room, coordinating with his father and the remaining generals. He looked exhausted, his clothes torn and blood-stained, but his eyes lit up when he saw her. "You're alive," he said, pulling her into a fierce embrace. "So are you." Marcus Blackthorn retreated with what's left of his forces, King Aldrich said grimly. "But this isn't over. They'll regroup, try again. Then we finish it," Caspian said. "We take the fight to them, destroy their ancient breeding grounds, cut off their resources, hunt down every conspirator until none remain." "Agreed. But first we deal with our internal problems." The king's eyes moved to Elara. "You saved countless lives tonight. The reports are unanimous. A silver wolf, larger than any Omega, pulling people from burning buildings and fighting off attackers. I did what anyone would do." "No, you did what a true leader does, what a queen would do." King Aldrich's expression was serious. "My son says he's claimed you as his mate, that you bonded during your escape." "Yes, your majesty. The council will object. They'll say you're unsuitable, that your bloodline is weak, that you're too young and inexperienced." "I know, but the council serves at my pleasure, not the other way around." The king smiled, and for the first time, Elara saw the resemblance between father and son. "If my son chooses you, and you've proven yourself worthy through action, then who am I to argue with the moon goddess's will?" "Father," Caspian started, sounding shocked. "Don't look so surprised. I was young once, made my own unconventional choices. Your mother was a beta from a minor pack, and everyone said I was mad to marry her. She became the best queen this kingdom ever knew." His expression turned sad. "I miss her every day." "She'd be proud of you both," General Thorne said quietly. He'd been standing in the corner, and now he approached Elara. "As am I. Proud of what you've become." "We need to talk," Elara said. "About why you left. About what happened." "We will. Promise. But right now we have a kingdom to save," she finished. "I know. Later." He nodded and something passed between them.
Not forgiveness yet, but the possibility of it. King Aldrich cleared his throat. I'm calling a council meeting for this afternoon. I'll formally announce Caspian's mating choice and begin proceedings to have Elara recognized as crown princess. Those who object can take it up with the hundreds of lives she saved. Thank you, father, Caspian said. Don't thank me yet. The real battle is just beginning. The Blackthorns won't give up easily, and they still have ancients at their command. The king's expression hardened. We're going to war, and it's going to cost us dearly. Then we make sure it costs them more, Elara said. Everyone turned to look at her. They're expecting us to defend, to wait for them to attack again. We should strike first. Hit their breeding grounds. Free any captive wolves. Destroy their ability to make more ancients. She moved to the map table, pointing to the valley they'd escaped from. I know the layout. I can guide a strike team in. That's suicide, an advisor protested. So was infiltrating the first time. But we survived. Elara met Caspian's eyes. We can do this. End it before more innocents die. She's right, Caspian said. We can't wait for them to rebuild. We need to act now, while they're still reeling from tonight's defeat. King Aldrich studied the map, his expression thoughtful. How many wolves would you need? 50, maybe. Fast strikers. Wolves who can move quietly and hit hard. You'll have them. I'll lead the main forces against the Blackthorn territory directly, draw their attention and resources. You take your strike team to the valley and burn it to the ground. The king smiled grimly. Let's show these traitors what happens when you betray the crown. The council meeting was every bit as contentious as predicted. 7 elders sat in judgment, their expressions ranging from skeptical to openly hostile as Caspian presented Elara as his chosen mate. This is unprecedented, Elder Marissa declared, her voice sharp. A crown prince does not mate with a rejected Omega. A crown prince mates with whomever he chooses, Caspian countered. The law is clear on this. The law assumes the prince will choose wisely. This girl has no political connections, no powerful family, no training in royal protocols. This woman saved my life, infiltrated an enemy stronghold, fought her way through ancients, and spent last night pulling civilians from burning buildings while you were safe in your mansion. Caspian's voice was cold steel. She's worth 100 political marriages. Her wolf was weak before this supposed moon goddess intervention. How do we know it's permanent? How do we know she won't revert? Because I say so. The new voice came from the doorway. Every head turned to find an old woman standing there, bent with age but radiating power that made Elara's wolf instinctively bow. High Priestess, King Aldrich said, rising to his feet. This is unexpected. I came as soon as I heard. The High Priestess hobbled forward, leaning on a gnarled staff. The moon goddess spoke to me 3 nights ago, told me a silver wolf would rise, chosen to lead the kingdom into a new era. I see now she meant this child. She approached Elara, her ancient eyes kind. You were born weak so that you could understand weakness. Born low so that you could see how the powerful abuse their station. Born rejected so that you could learn the value of choosing your own path. The priestess touched Elara's forehead gently. The goddess has great plans for you, child. Never doubt that. I don't understand, Elara whispered. Why me? Because you have a quality that cannot be taught or inherited. You have compassion paired with courage, kindness paired with strength. You are what this kingdom needs to heal the divisions that have nearly destroyed it. The High Priestess turned to face the council. Any who oppose this mating oppose the will of the moon goddess herself. And I assure you, she has grown quite tired of wolves who value bloodlines over character. The council members fell silent, unable to argue against the High Priestess's authority. Then it's settled, King Aldrich said. Caspian and Elara's mating will be formalized in 3 days' time, after we've dealt with the Blackthorn threat. Those who attend will witness the beginning of a new era for our kingdom. The meeting adjourned, and Elara found herself surrounded by well-wishers and sycophants. Wolves who'd ignored her existence yesterday, suddenly eager to befriend the future crown princess. Caspian extracted her from the crowd, pulling her into a private garden where they could finally breathe. That was overwhelming, she said, sinking onto a bench. It's only going to get worse. Royal life is all politics and performances. He sat beside her, taking her hand. Are you sure this is what you want? Because I can still find a way out. Can still. Yes. She cut him off firmly. I'm sure. Terrified, but sure. Good. He kissed her forehead. Because I don't think I could survive losing you now. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, just being together. Then Sophie appeared in the garden entrance, her expression urgent. Sorry to interrupt, but General Thorne is assembling the strike team. He said if you want to be part of it, you need to report to the training yard immediately. The mission, right? Elara stood, feeling the weight of everything settle on her shoulders again. Time to end this. Time to become legends, Caspian corrected, standing with her. They walked hand in hand toward the training yard, toward the final battle that would determine the kingdom's future, toward the confrontation that had been building since the moment Daemon Blackthorne had rejected a weak Omega in front of everyone she knew. She'd been nothing then, invisible, worthless, forgotten. Now she was a silver wolf touched by the moon goddess, betrothed to the crown prince, and about to lead a strike force against enemies who'd underestimated her one too many times. The thought made her smile. Let them underestimate her. Let them think she was still weak, still broken, still easy to dismiss. They'd learn the truth soon enough, and it would be the last mistake they ever made. This story isn't over yet. In fact, we're heading into the final, most explosive confrontation. If you're still with Elara, if you're rooting for her to destroy the Blackthorns and claim her future, smash that like button and subscribe. Drop a comment telling me what you want to see happen to Daemon and Kale. Let's finish this together. The strike team assembled at midnight, 50 of the kingdom's best warriors. All of them volunteers who understood this was likely a one-way mission. Elara stood among them, wearing leather armor that had been hastily fitted to her smaller frame. Beside her, Caspian was checking weapons and supplies with methodical precision. Her father, General Thorne, addressed the assembled wolves. We're going deep into enemy territory to destroy the ancient breeding facility in the valley. This is not a rescue mission. This is not a capture mission. This is complete annihilation. His voice was hard, brooking no argument. We move fast, we hit hard, and we don't stop until everything is ash. Understood. Yes, sir. The chorus came back. The Crown Prince and his mate will be leading one squad. I'll lead the second. Commander Vale takes the third. We enter through 3 different points in the valley, converge on the breeding facility, and burn it from the inside out. He pulled out the maps Elara and Caspian had brought back, spreading them across a table. The main compound is here. Intelligence suggests they keep the ancients in underground cells to control them better. We need to ensure none escape before we set the fires. What about captive wolves? Someone asked. Prisoners. Free anyone you can, but the mission comes first. We cannot allow the Blackthorn forces to rebuild this capability. The briefing continued for another hour, every detail planned and rehearsed. Then they moved out, 50 wolves slipping through the city gates under cover of darkness. They ran through the night, covering in hours what had taken days before. The urgency drove them forward, the knowledge that every moment wasted was another moment for their enemies to prepare. As they approached the valley, Elara felt her wolf stir restlessly. This place held terrible memories, pain and fear and the moment she'd killed for the first time. But it also held the beginning of her transformation. This was where she'd stopped being a victim and started being a survivor. You ready? Caspian asked quietly as they neared the split point where the 3 squads would separate. To burn down the place that tried to break me? Absolutely. His smile was fierce and proud. That's my mate. They kissed briefly, both knowing this might be the last time. Then General Thorne called for positions and they separated. Elara led her squad, 15 wolves including Sophie and Finn, along the northern ridge. Below them, the valley camp was quieter than before, but still active. Guards patrolled, torches burned, and in the distance, she could hear the chilling howls of captive ancients. They descended carefully, using terrain and darkness as cover. The plan was to infiltrate the underground cells first, neutralize the handlers, and seal the ancients inside before setting the fires. Risky but necessary. Free ancients could slaughter them all. They reached the northern entrance to the underground facility, a reinforced metal door guarded by 2 wolves in blackthorn armor. Elara didn't hesitate. She shifted and attacked before they could raise an alarm, her jaws finding the first guard's throat, while Sophie took down the second. Quick, silent, efficient. They dragged the bodies out of sight and pried open the door. The smell that washed out was overwhelming. Blood and fear and something chemical that burned her sensitive nose. Elara shifted back to human form to better navigate the narrow corridors, leading her squad deeper into the facility. The underground complex was massive, far larger than they'd anticipated. Cells lined both sides of the main corridor, each one containing an ancient in various stages of development. Some were fully grown, huge and terrifying. Others were younger, smaller, their eyes showing confusion rather than rage. "Moon Goddess," Finn whispered. "They're breeding them in captivity, and controlling them with those." Elara pointed to the collars each ancient wore, thick metal bands that sparked with magical energy. They moved systematically, sealing cell doors and checking for handlers. Most had fled when the siege on the capital failed, leaving only a skeleton crew to manage the ancients. Those few remaining died quickly. Elara's squad reached the central chamber and found what they were looking for: the control systems for the collars, the feeding schedules, the documents detailing years of breeding programs. And in a smaller chamber off to the side, cages containing normal wolves who'd been captured for experimentation. "Free them," Elara commanded. "Get them out through the north entrance." While her squad worked on that, she examined the control systems. There had to be a way to ensure the ancients couldn't escape when the fires started. She found it, a master lockdown protocol that would seal all the cells permanently, cutting off air circulation. The ancients would suffocate long before the fire reached them. Brutal but necessary. Her hand hovered over the activation switch. These creatures hadn't chosen to be weapons. They'd been bred, tortured, twisted into monsters by wolves who valued power over compassion. They deserved better than to die trapped in cages. But if she freed them, they'd kill everything in their path. Would slaughter her squad, the freed prisoners, possibly rampage all the way to the capital. Sometimes there were no good choices, only necessary ones. Elara activated the lockdown. The cells slammed shut with finality, and she heard the ancients begin to howl as they realized what was happening. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry." Then she turned and ran, her squad following with the freed prisoners. 12 wolves, emaciated and traumatized but alive. They emerged from the underground facility as explosions began to rock the valley. Caspian's squad and her father's squad had started their attacks, and now fire bloomed across the compound. "Move," Elara commanded, leading her group toward the valley's northern exit. Behind them, the breeding facility collapsed in on itself, the underground chambers becoming a tomb for the ancients trapped inside. They'd made it maybe 50 yards when Cale Blackthorn stepped into their path. He wasn't alone. 20 wolves flanked him, all of them armed and armored, all of them looking ready for violence. "Elara," Cale said, his voice calm despite the chaos around them. "I should have killed you when I had the chance." "You should have done a lot of things differently," she replied, her squad forming a defensive line behind her. "Last chance. Surrender now, and I'll make your deaths quick. Fight, and I'll ensure you suffer for days before I let you die." Elara shifted, her silver wolf rising to face him. Around her, her squad shifted as well, 15 wolves ready to fight against 20. Bad odds, but they'd faced worse. Cale smiled and shifted too, his wolf massive and dark, identical to Damon's but somehow colder. "So be it." His voice echoed in her mind through the bond all shifted wolves shared. "Die knowing you accomplished nothing. The ancients were just one facility. We have 3 more. Your precious kingdom is still doomed. 3 more facilities. They'd destroyed one, but there were 3 others." The information hit like a physical blow, but Elara couldn't process it now. Now she had to survive. The two forces collided in an explosion of fur and fangs and savage violence. Elara went straight for Kale, her wolf driven by fury and determination. They'd underestimated her too many times. Had used her, manipulated her, tried to break her. Now she'd show them what broken things could become. She was faster than Kale expected, stronger than he remembered. The moon goddess's blessing had changed her fundamentally, had made her into something new. Her jaws found his shoulder, and she felt bone crack. Kale howled in pain and rage, twisting to throw her off. They rolled across the blood-soaked ground, each trying to find a killing hold. Around them the battle raged. Elara caught glimpses of Sophie fighting two wolves at once, of Finn going down under 3 attackers, of the freed prisoners joining the fight despite their weakness. Then Kale's claws raked across her side, and pain exploded through her body. She yelped and stumbled, giving him an opening. He lunged for her throat, and she barely managed to dodge, his teeth grazing her neck instead of crushing it. Too close. He was too strong, too experienced. But she'd learned something important in all her battles. Strength wasn't everything. Elara stopped trying to overpower him and instead used her smaller size to her advantage. She went low, slipping under his guard, and tore into his belly. Kale screamed, a sound of pure agony that cut through the battle's noise. He collapsed, his wolf form shifting back to human as his body went into shock. Blood poured from the wound, too much blood. Elara shifted too, standing over him as he bled out onto the scorched earth. 3 more facilities, she said. Where? Kale laughed, blood bubbling from his lips. Go to hell. You first. She didn't kill him, just stood there and watched as the life faded from his eyes, as the wolf who'd manipulated her, who'd nearly destroyed the kingdom, paid the price for his ambition. When he was dead, she turned to assess the battle. Her squad had won, but the cost was terrible. 5 of her wolves were dead, and twice that many were injured. The freed prisoners had fought with desperate courage, but 3 of them hadn't survived. Regroup, she commanded. We need to get out of here before. A roar split the night, so loud and primal it made the ground shake. From the ruins of the breeding facility something emerged. An ancient, but not like the ones she'd seen before. This one was enormous, easily 4 times the size of a normal wolf. Its fur was white as bone, and its eyes burned with an intelligence that was terrifyingly human. The Alpha Ancient, the original bloodline, the source from which all the others had been bred. And they'd just destroyed its home. Run, Elara whispered. Then, louder, run. Her squad scattered, the injured helping the wounded, everyone moving as fast as they could toward the valley's exit. The Alpha Ancient pursued with devastating speed, its massive paws eating up distance. It caught one of the freed prisoners, and the wolf's screams cut off with horrible finality. Sophie went down, her injured leg failing. Elara doubled back without thinking, putting herself between the Ancient and her friend. Go, she commanded Sophie. I'll hold it off. You'll die. Then I'll die buying you time. Move. Sophie ran, tears streaming down her face. The Alpha Ancient focused on Elara, its intelligent eyes studying her like she was a puzzle to be solved. She was going to die. Knew it with absolute certainty. This creature was too large, too powerful, too far beyond anything she could handle. But she'd buy her squad time, would give them a chance to escape. The Ancient lunged. Elara dodged, shifted, went for its legs. Her teeth barely scratched its thick hide. It batted her aside like she weighed nothing, and she flew through the air, slamming into a boulder hard enough to crack ribs. Pain. So much pain. She struggled to her feet, her wolf form wavering. The bond damage from Damon's rejection, the exhaustion of constant fighting, the injuries. It was all catching up with her. The Ancient approached slowly now, savoring the kill. This was it. This was how she died. Not by Damon's cruelty or Kale's manipulation, but by an Ancient created through their evil. Fitting in a terrible way, the Ancient crouched to spring, and a golden wolf slammed into it from the side with the force of an avalanche. Caspian. He'd come back for her, had abandoned his own squad to save her. The two massive wolves fought with apocalyptic fury, golden and white, prince and ancient, civilization and chaos. Caspian was strong, but the ancient was stronger. It caught him, its jaws closing on his shoulder, and Elara heard bone crunch. No, she couldn't lose him. Not after everything. She forced her wolf to rise one more time, called on every reserve of strength she had, and launched herself at the ancient's exposed throat. Her jaws closed and she tasted blood. Not enough to kill, but enough to hurt, to distract. The ancient released Caspian and turned its fury on her. She held on, her jaw locked, refusing to let go even as it thrashed and tried to throw her off. She was dimly aware of Caspian rising, of him joining the attack, of both of them working in perfect synchronization. The ancient was too powerful to kill this way, but together maybe they could drive it off. Then the explosions began. Not from the battle, but from deep underground. The main breeding facility's support structures were collapsing, and they were taking the entire valley floor with them. Massive sinkholes opened, swallowing buildings and wolves and everything in their path. The ground beneath the Alpha Ancient crumbled. It howled, trying to scramble to safety, but the sinkhole was too large, too fast. Elara released her hold and jumped back, Caspian doing the same. They watched as the Ancient fell, disappearing into the collapsing earth, its howls fading into the depths. Move! Caspian shifted and grabbed her human form, carrying her as he ran for the valley's edge. Behind them, the entire compound was collapsing, years of underground excavation finally causing catastrophic failure. They reached the ridge and kept going, putting distance between themselves and the destruction. Finally, when they were far enough to be safe, they collapsed together, both shifting back to human form and just holding each other. "You came back," Elara gasped. "Always," Caspian replied. "I'll always come back for you." Around them, the survivors of the strike force gathered. They'd lost 17 wolves, but they destroyed the facility and killed Kale Blackthorn. The mission was a success, but at what cost? And with 3 more facilities still operational, how many more battles would they have to fight? Elara pushed the questions away for now. They were alive. They'd survived. And tomorrow they'd figure out the rest. Tonight, she just wanted to hold her mate and be grateful for every breath. We're in the final stretch now. The biggest battles are behind us, but Elara's story isn't finished yet. If you want to see how she becomes queen, how she finally confronts Daemon, and how this kingdom transforms, you need to stay subscribed. Comment below with your predictions for the ending. And if this story has made you feel something, anger, hope, triumph, hit that like button and let me know. The journey back to the capital took 2 days instead of the rapid march out. Too many wounded, too many traumatized freed prisoners who could barely walk, let alone run. Elara spent most of the journey in human form, helping tend to injuries and offering what comfort she could. The reality of what they'd done sat heavy on her conscience. All those ancients trapped in the collapsing facility, dying slow deaths in the darkness. They'd been created as weapons, but they'd also been living creatures who'd never asked for their fate. "You're thinking about them," her father said quietly, walking beside her. "I killed them, activated the lockdown, trapped them inside. You saved lives. If those ancients had escaped, they would have slaughtered hundreds." "I know. Doesn't make it easier." General Thorne was silent for a moment. Then, "Leadership often means making impossible choices. You did what was necessary. That's more than most could have done. Is that why you left?" The question burst out before she could stop it. "Because leadership required you to make an impossible choice?" He flinched. "Your mother told you I was dead?" "Yes. She was protecting you, protecting herself." He gestured to a fallen log, and they sat while the rest of the force continued moving. "I was accused of treason 15 years ago. False charges, planted evidence, political enemies trying to destroy me. I could have fought it, could have demanded a trial. But the king offered me a deal. Disappear completely, and the accusations against me would disappear too. More importantly, they wouldn't extend to my family. So you just left? Without saying goodbye? If I'd said goodbye, You and your mother would have been investigated, questioned, possibly charged as accomplices. I couldn't risk that. His voice was thick with old pain. I sent her a letter explaining everything, telling her to say I was dead, to move on with her life. I thought she'd find someone better, thought you'd grow up safe and happy. She died 3 years later. Heartbreak, the healers said. I know. I came to the funeral, watched from a distance. Saw you standing there, so small and alone, and it took everything I had not to run to you. He turned to face her. I'm sorrier than you'll ever know, Elara. Every day I thought about you. Wondered if you were okay. Hoped you were being taken care of. Uncle Marcus took me in. He was terrible. I'll kill him. Don't. He's not worth it. She looked at her father, really looked at him. He was older than she remembered, his hair gray, his face lined. But his eyes were the same, kind and sad and full of regret. I don't forgive you yet. I can't. But I understand why you did it. That's more than I deserve. He stood, offering her his hand. Come on, let's get home. They walked together in silence, and Elara felt something shift. Not forgiveness, not yet, but the possibility of it growing like a seed planted in fertile soil. Maybe, eventually, they could be family again. The capital welcomed them as heroes. Crowds lined the streets as the strike force marched through, cheering and throwing flowers. Elara felt uncomfortable with the adulation, aware that 17 wolves hadn't made it back, that their families were grieving while everyone else celebrated. But Caspian had explained this was necessary. The kingdom needed to see strength, needed to believe victory was possible. So she stood tall despite her injuries. Let the crowd see the silver wolf who'd helped destroy an ancient breeding facility. King Aldrich met them at the palace steps, his expression grave despite the celebration. Well done, he said. But we have a problem. Inside the war room, he explained. The main Blackthorn forces had retreated to their ancestral territory and were fortifying it, clearly preparing for a siege. More concerning, scouts had reported activity at 3 other locations that matched the destroyed facility's profile. Kale had been telling the truth. There were more breeding facilities. We need to hit them simultaneously, General Vale argued. Can't give them time to relocate the ancients. We don't have the forces, another advisor countered. The strike on the valley cost us some of our best warriors. We need time to recover, to recruit replacements. Time is exactly what we don't have, Caspian said. Every day we wait, they breed more ancients, turn more wolves to their cause. The argument continued, voices rising, until King Aldrich slammed his fist on the table. Enough! We'll divide our forces. Half will lay siege to the Blackthorn territory. The other half will form 3 strike teams to hit the remaining facilities. He looked at Elara. I'm assuming you'll want to lead one? Yes, Your Majesty. Then choose your team carefully. You leave in 3 days. The meeting adjourned, and Elara found herself once again swept into preparations and planning. But that night, she stole away to the garden where she and Caspian had talked before. He found her there as she'd known he would. Can't sleep? He asked, sitting beside her. Too much in my head. Want to talk about it? She leaned against him, drawing comfort from his warmth. When does it end? When do we get to just be? To live without constantly preparing for the next battle. When we've won. When the kingdom is safe and the Blackthorns are defeated and we can finally focus on building instead of destroying. He kissed the top of her head. Soon, love. I promise. You can't promise that. I can hope it. And sometimes hope is enough. They sat in silence, watching stars appear in the darkening sky. The mating ceremony is supposed to be tomorrow, Elara said. But with everything happening, we'll postpone. The kingdom will understand. What if I don't want to postpone? Caspian pulled back to look at her. What? What if I want one perfect moment before we go back to war? One memory of something beautiful instead of all this blood and death. She met his eyes. Mate bond with me tomorrow, Caspian. Make me yours officially before we risk everything again. Elara, please. I need this. Need something good to hold on to. He searched her face, then nodded. Tomorrow. We'll make it simple, just us and the witnesses the law requires. No politics, no performance. Just our bond. Thank you. They stayed in the garden until dawn, talking and planning and stealing moments of peace before chaos claimed them again. The mating ceremony was held at noon in the palace's private chapel. Only 20 wolves attended: King Aldrich, General Thorn, the High Priestess, Sophie, and the survivors from the strike force, and a handful of advisors who couldn't be excluded for political reasons. Elara wore a simple white dress that the palace seamstresses had somehow created overnight. Caspian wore royal colors, red and gold, looking every inch the crown prince despite his healing injuries. The High Priestess conducted the ceremony, her ancient voice carrying weight and power. Do you, Caspian Aldrich Thorn, Crown Prince of Lunathrone, accept this bond freely and completely? I do. Do you, Elara Thorn, accept this bond freely and completely? I do. Then by the power vested in me by the moon goddess, I declare you mated. May your bond be strong, your love be true, and your years together be many. The kiss was supposed to be brief and ceremonial. It wasn't. Caspian pulled her close and kissed her like they were the only two wolves in existence. Like the ceremony and witnesses and politics didn't matter. Just them, just this moment, just the bond that had formed in blood and battle and choosing each other despite everything working against them. When they finally broke apart, the small gathering was applauding and the High Priestess was smiling. Present her, King Aldrich commanded. Caspian led Elara to the center of the room, where the king waited with a silver circlet. Elara Thorn, by the power of your mate bond and my authority as king, I name you Crown Princess of Lunathrone. May you serve the kingdom with wisdom, courage, and compassion. He placed the circlet on her head, and it felt like the weight of the entire kingdom settling on her shoulders. She was Crown Princess now, had gone from rejected Omega to future queen in a matter of weeks. The thought was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. The ceremony ended, and while Caspian was drawn into conversations with advisors, Elara slipped outside for air. She found her father waiting in the corridor. You looked beautiful, he said quietly. Thank you. Your mother would have been so proud. The words broke something in her. Elara felt tears start to fall, and suddenly her father's arms were around her, holding her while she cried. I miss her, she sobbed. I miss her so much, and I wish she could have seen this. She can. She's watching from wherever souls go when they leave us. And she's proud of you, baby girl. I know she is. They stood there for a long time, father and daughter, beginning to heal wounds that had festered for years. Finally, Elara pulled back and wiped her eyes. I leave for the strike mission in 2 days. I know. I'm leading the siege on the Blackthorn territory. Be careful. You too. He hesitated, then said, Daemon Blackthorn is still alive. He's leading the defense of their ancestral home. If you encounter him, I know what to do. Do you? Because he rejected you, humiliated you, tried to have you killed. You'd have every right to make him suffer. I would, but I won't. She touched the circlet on her head. I'm Crown Princess now. I have to be better than my worst impulses. Her father smiled. Your mother would have said exactly that. The next 2 days passed in a blur of preparation and planning. Elara chose her strike team carefully. Sophie, 10 experienced warriors, and 2 mages who specialized in fire magic. Their target was the second-largest breeding facility, located in the mountains north of the Blackthorn territory. Intelligence suggested this facility was more heavily guarded, with at least 50 soldiers and twice as many ancients as the valley compound. Bad odds, but they'd faced worse. On the morning of departure, Caspian pulled her aside. This is for you, he said, handing her a dagger in a jeweled sheath. It was my mother's. She carried it during the border wars, used it to save my father's life more than once. Elara drew the blade, marveling at its perfect balance. I can't take this. It should stay with you. It should stay with someone who'll use it well. That's you. He sheathed the dagger and attached it to her belt. Bring it back to me, along with yourself. I will. Promise. They kissed goodbye, both knowing it might be for the last time. Then Elara mounted her horse and rode out at the head of her strike team, the silver wolf who'd become crown princess leading warriors into battle. The journey north took 4 days through increasingly hostile terrain. They avoided main roads, sticking to game trails and wilderness paths where enemy scouts were less likely to spot them. On the 4th night, they made camp in a dense forest. Elara was checking the perimeter when Sophie approached. "Can I ask you something?" Sophie said hesitantly. "Of course. Do you ever regret it? Volunteering for that first mission, choosing to fight instead of just surviving?" Elara considered the question carefully. "Sometimes, when I'm scared or hurt or watching people die. But then I remember who I was before, invisible, powerless, waiting for someone to give me permission to matter. And I know I made the right choice, even though it's cost you so much, especially because it's cost me so much. Easy choices don't change us. Hard ones do." She looked at the young wolf. "Why do you ask?" "Because I'm terrified of tomorrow. We're going to attack a facility that's probably going to kill us all. And I keep thinking maybe I should have stayed behind, should have chosen safety." "You still could. No one would judge you." Sophie shook her head. "No, I want to see this through. Want to be part of something that matters." She smiled shakily. "I just needed to hear that it's okay to be scared. Being scared means you understand the risks. It's the ones who aren't scared you have to worry about." Elara put her hand on Sophie's shoulder. "We'll watch each other's backs tomorrow. We'll survive this like we've survived everything else. Together. Together." They sat by the fire for a while, 2 wolves who'd started as exiles and become warriors, finding courage in each other's presence. The next morning, they reached the facility. It was built into the mountain itself, a massive structure of stone and metal that looked more like a fortress than a breeding complex. Guards patrolled the perimeter, and Elara counted at least 70 wolves in defensive positions. Worse odds than she'd anticipated. "How do we approach this?" one warrior asked. Elara studied the layout, her mind racing through possibilities. A frontal assault would be suicide, but there had to be a weakness, some way in that wouldn't get them all killed. A drainage system running down the mountainside, probably for waste disposal. Narrow and dangerous, but potentially unguarded. "We go in through the drainage," she decided. "Small teams move fast, plant the fires and get out before they realize what's happening." It was risky, but everything about this mission was risky. They waited until nightfall, then began the descent. The drainage pipe was worse than Elara had imagined. Narrow, slick with slime, and filled with a stench that made her wolf whimper in protest. But it led where she'd hoped, into the facility's lower levels. They emerged in a storage room, and Elara quickly got her bearings. The breeding cells should be 1 level down, the control systems 2 levels up. "Sophie, you and 3 warriors take the controls. Plant fires and get out. The rest of us will handle the ancients." They split up, moving through corridors with practiced silence. Elara's group reached the breeding level and found it eerily quiet. Row after row of cells, each containing an ancient in various stages of maturity. And in the center of the room, waiting with a smile that made her blood run cold, stood Damon Blackthorn. "Hello, Elara," he said. "I've been expecting you." "Trap," one of her warriors breathed. "Obviously." Damon's smile widened. "Did you really think we wouldn't anticipate retaliation after you destroyed our primary facility? We've been waiting, watching. And here you are, walking right into our hands." Doors slammed shut around them. Guards poured in from hidden passages, at least 30 of them, all armed and armored. Elara's team was surrounded, outnumbered 3 to 1. "Sophie, get out," Elara commanded through their pack bond. "Abort and—" "She can't hear you," Damon interrupted. "We're blocking all mental communications in this facility. Your little friend is probably being captured right about now." "No, this couldn't be happening." "What do you want, Damon?" "What I've always wanted. To fix the mistake the moon goddess made when she matched us." He approached slowly, like a predator stalking wounded prey. "You were supposed to die in the borderlands. Then you were supposed to die in the valley. You keep surviving, keep interfering, and I'm tired of it. So kill me. Get it over with. Oh, I will. But first, I'm going to break that bond you formed with the Crown Prince. Going to make you watch while I tear apart your mate and everyone you care about. Going to ensure you spend your last moments knowing you failed. The cruelty in his voice was almost casual, like he was discussing the weather rather than torture and murder. Elara felt rage build inside her, hot and pure. This wolf had rejected her, exiled her, tried repeatedly to kill her. And now he wanted to destroy everything she'd built from the ashes of that rejection. No, she'd come too far, survived too much, become too strong to let him win now. I reject you, she said clearly. Damon blinked, confused. What? I, Elara Thorn, Crown Princess of Lunathrone, reject Damon Blackthorn as my former mate. I reject any claim he ever had on me, any connection between our souls, any bond that ever existed. Her voice grew stronger with each word. I am not yours. I was never yours. And you have no power over me anymore. The formal rejection, issued from her side, severed something she hadn't known was still there. A tiny thread connecting her to Damon. A remnant of the bond he'd broken that had never fully healed. It snapped, and Damon staggered as if struck. You can't, he gasped. I just did. And now you're nothing to me, not even worth my hatred. She shifted, her silver wolf rising with power and fury. Her team shifted with her, 10 wolves ready to fight against impossible odds. Kill them, Damon screamed. Kill them all. The guards attacked, and the breeding facility erupted into chaos. Elara fought with everything she had, her enhanced strength and speed making her a whirlwind of teeth and claws. She took down one guard, then another, then a third. But there were too many. Her warriors were falling, their blood staining the stone floor. She saw one of her team get torn apart by 3 guards. Saw another go down with a spear through their chest. They were losing. Then explosions rocked the facility. Sophie had made it to the control systems after all. Fire began to spread through the upper levels, and smoke poured into the breeding chamber. The guards panicked, torn between fighting and fleeing the flames. Retreat! Elara commanded her survivors. Back through the drainage. They ran, fighting their way through confused guards, racing against the spreading fire. Elara was the last out, making sure all her remaining warriors made it to the drainage pipe. 6 had survived out of 13. Behind her, she heard Damon screaming orders, heard the facility falling apart as support beams collapsed. She dove into the drainage pipe and scrambled upward, her paws slipping on the slime but her determination driving her forward. She emerged into night air and kept running, her survivors with her, until they were far enough away to watch the facility burn. Sophie was there, bleeding from a dozen wounds but alive. I got the fires started before they found us. Lost 2 warriors getting out. You did good. Elara shifted back to human form, assessing their casualties. Out of 13 wolves, only 7 remained. We all did good. We failed, one warrior said bitterly. Didn't destroy the ancients. Didn't eliminate the threat. We struck a major blow against their infrastructure and proved they're vulnerable. That's not failure. Elara looked at the burning facility. And we survived. That matters. They watched until dawn, making sure the fire had spread to the breeding levels. The ancients' howls eventually fell silent, and Elara felt that familiar guilt return. More creatures dying for the sins of their creators. We need to report to the prince, Sophie said quietly. Let him know about the trap, about the possibility that the other strike teams might be walking into similar situations. She was right. Personal grief would have to wait. They began the journey south, moving as fast as injured wolves could travel. 3 days later, they reached the capital. The city was under siege again. The Blackthorn forces had returned in greater numbers, and this time they brought the ancients from their remaining facilities. Dozens of the massive wolves threw themselves at the city's defenses while normal soldiers attacked with siege equipment. The walls were holding, but barely. Elara's team slipped in through the smuggler's tunnel and made their way to the palace. They found King Aldrich in the war room, looking a decade older than when she'd left. Caspian stood beside him, his face lighting up when he saw her. "You're alive," he breathed, pulling her into a fierce embrace. "Barely. It was a trap. Damon knew we were coming. So did the other facilities. We lost both strike teams. Only 5 survivors total." Caspian's voice was hollow. "They were waiting for us at every location." The news hit like a physical blow. 2 entire teams gone. "How?" Elara asked. "How did they know?" "Spy in our ranks," General Thorne said grimly. "Someone's been feeding the Blackthorns our plans. We've been trying to root them out. But we're running out of time," King Aldrich finished. "The city can't withstand a prolonged siege. We need to end this now." "Then we go on the offensive," Caspian said. "Stop reacting, start acting. Hit the Blackthorn ancestral territory directly. Cut off the head of the snake. We don't have the forces. Half our army is defending the walls. Then we use what we have. A small force moving fast, targeting their leadership." Caspian looked at his father. "Let me take 50 volunteers. We'll infiltrate the Blackthorn estate, kill or capture the family, and end this war." "That's suicide." "So is waiting for them to breach our walls." Caspian's jaw was set. "I'm going, father. With or without your permission." King Aldrich looked at his son for a long moment, then nodded. "Take 100, and take every advantage you can get. Mages, blessed weapons, anything that might tip the odds." "Thank you." "Don't thank me. Just come back alive." The king's eyes moved to Elara. "Both of you." The assault force assembled at midnight. 100 wolves, the best the kingdom had left. Mages carrying blessed fire, warriors wielding weapons forged from consecrated silver, scouts who could move silent as shadows. And at their head, the crown prince and princess, mated and bonded and absolutely determined to end this war. Elara stood before the assembled wolves, feeling the weight of their trust and hope. "We're going to do something tonight that most people would call insane," she began. "We're going to attack the most heavily fortified position in the kingdom with a force 1/10 the size of their defenders. We're probably going to die." Nervous laughter rippled through the group. "But if we succeed, we end this war. We save the kingdom. We prove that courage and conviction can overcome any odds." She paused. "I was a weak Omega 6 weeks ago. Rejected, exiled, considered worthless by everyone who knew me. Now I'm crown princess, leading warriors into battle against wolves who tried to destroy me. If I can change that much, we can accomplish anything." "For the crown princess," someone shouted. "For the kingdom," others echoed. They moved out, 100 wolves running through the night toward the Blackthorn ancestral territory. The estate was massive, a castle built on a mountain, its walls thick and high. Torches burned along the battlements, and guards patrolled in organized shifts. But Elara had studied the maps, had learned from her father about the castle's weaknesses. Every fortress had them, hidden entrances, forgotten passages, structural vulnerabilities. This one's weakness was hubris. The Blackthorns had ruled this territory for centuries, had never been seriously threatened. They'd grown complacent, comfortable. That would be their downfall. "Teams of 10, Caspian commanded quietly. "Alpha team comes with me and Elara through the main gate. We'll draw their attention. The rest of you use the chaos to infiltrate through the servants' passages on the eastern side. Converge on the Great Hall, where their leadership will be gathering." It was a desperate plan, relying on speed and surprise over tactics. But sometimes desperation was all you had. Elara led Alpha team toward the main gate. They wore Blackthorn armor they'd stripped from captured soldiers, hoping to get close before anyone realized they were enemies. The guards at the gate barely glanced at them. "Password. Silver Moon Rising," Elara said, using the code they'd tortured out of a captured officer. The gates opened, and they walked into the enemy's stronghold. They made it 50 yards before someone recognized Caspian despite his helmet. "That's the Crown Prince. Sound the alarm." Bells began to ring, and the castle erupted into chaos. "So much for stealth," Caspian said, drawing his sword. "Fight!" Alpha team charged, 10 wolves against hundreds, buying time for the other teams to infiltrate. Elara fought with savage efficiency, her mother's dagger in one hand and a borrowed sword in the other. Guards fell before her, their armor no match for blessed weapons and desperate fury. Beside her, Caspian was a golden whirlwind, his strength and skill carving a path through the defenders. They fought their way deeper into the castle, every step bought with blood. Behind them, she could hear other teams engaging, could feel through the pack bonds that the plan was working. They were inside, they were causing chaos, they were forcing the Blackthorns to react. They reached the great hall and burst through the doors. The Blackthorn leadership was there, just as intelligence had predicted. Alpha Marcus Blackthorn stood at the center, surrounded by advisors and commanders. And beside him, bandaged and battered but very much alive, stood Damon. "You," he snarled when he saw Elara. "You just won't die, will you?" "Funny. I was thinking the same about you." She advanced into the hall, her team spreading out behind her. "It's over, Marcus. Your breeding facilities are destroyed, your forces are depleted, and the kingdom knows about your treason. Surrender now, and the king might show mercy." Marcus laughed, harsh and bitter. "Mercy? From Aldrich? He'll execute every Blackthorn down to the children. No, girl. We fight to the last wolf." Then the last wolf it is. The great hall erupted into violence. Elara went straight for Damon, her rage finally given permission to break free. He'd rejected her, tried to kill her, hurt people she loved. Now she'd make him pay. They clashed in the center of the hall. Two wolves who'd once been fated mates, now mortal enemies. Damon was strong, experienced, vicious, but Elara had been forged in fires he couldn't imagine, had survived torments that would have broken him. She was stronger. Her blade found his shoulder, opened a deep wound. He screamed and stumbled back. "This is for the humiliation," she said, striking again. Blood flew. "This is for the exile." Another strike. "This is for everyone you've hurt." Damon collapsed to his knees, bleeding from a dozen wounds. Elara stood over him, her blade at his throat, and for a moment, she savored it. The power, the victory, the absolute certainty that she could end him. "Do it," Damon gasped. "Kill me. Prove you're just as much a monster as I am." And there it was, the trap. If she killed him in cold blood, became the vengeful killer he'd always claimed she was, she'd prove him right. She'd become what he'd said she was, weak and pathetic, defined by her pain. Elara lowered her blade. "No, you're not worth losing myself over." She stepped back. "You're going to stand trial. You're going to face justice. And you're going to spend the rest of your life knowing that the weak Omega you rejected became crown princess while you rotted in a cell." She turned away from him, dismissing him as utterly as he'd once dismissed her. Around the hall, the battle was ending. The Blackthorn forces were surrendering, their leadership captured or dead. It was over. They'd won. Elara found Caspian across the hall, bleeding but alive. They met in the middle, holding each other while chaos resolved around them. "We did it," he whispered. "We did it," she agreed. The aftermath took weeks to process. Alpha Marcus Blackthorn and his surviving advisors were executed for treason. Damon was sentenced to life imprisonment in the deepest cell the kingdom had. The Blackthorn territory was placed under crown control, its resources distributed to packs that had suffered in the war. The remaining ancients were humanely euthanized by the High Priestess herself. Their suffering finally ended. The kingdom began to heal. Elara spent her days helping coordinate relief efforts, visiting wounded warriors, and learning what it meant to be crown princess. She spent her nights with Caspian, finding comfort in their bond and planning for the future they'd fought so hard to secure. 2 months after the final battle, King Aldrich called her to his private study. "Sit," he commanded, gesturing to a chair. She obeyed, nervous. The king rarely summoned her alone. "I'm dying," he said without preamble. Elara's heart stopped. "What?" "Old age, healers say. Maybe 6 months, maybe less." He held up a hand when she started to protest. "It's fine. I've had a good life, served my kingdom well. But it means Caspian will become king sooner than expected." I'm so sorry. Don't be. I'm telling you because you need to prepare. Being crown princess is one thing. Being queen is entirely different. He leaned forward. You'll be responsible for millions of lives, for laws and justice and the future of the kingdom. Are you ready for that? Was she? A month ago, she would have said no. But now, I'm ready to try, to do my best and learn from mistakes and serve the kingdom with everything I have. That's all anyone can do. King Aldrich smiled. You remind me of my mate, you know? She was young when she became queen, overwhelmed and terrified. But she grew into it, became the greatest leader I ever knew. You'll do the same. I hope so. I know so. The moon goddess doesn't make mistakes, not really. She chose you for this, and she chose well. He stood, moving to a cabinet and withdrawing a small box. This was hers. I want you to have it. Elara opened the box to find a ring, simple silver, engraved with moon phases. She wore it every day, said it reminded her that everything changes, that dark times pass and light returns. He helped her put it on. Remember that when being queen feels impossible, the darkness passes, light returns. Thank you. Elara's voice was thick with emotion. Thank you for loving my son, for fighting for this kingdom, for being exactly who we needed when we needed it most. King Aldrich died peacefully in his sleep 4 months later. The kingdom mourned, but the transition of power was smooth. Caspian became king, and Elara became queen, crowned in a ceremony that drew wolves from every corner of the realm. She stood before thousands, wearing the queen's crown, and promised to serve with wisdom, courage, and compassion. The same qualities she'd developed while surviving rejection and exile and war. The kingdom that had once discarded her as weak now called her queen. 5 years later, Elara stood in the palace gardens, watching her children play. Twin girls, both of them perfect and healthy and showing signs of strong wolves. They chased each other through the flowers, their laughter bright and pure. They have your eyes? Caspian said, coming up behind her and wrapping his arms around her waist. And your stubborn streak. Goddess help us. They stood together, watching their daughters, and Elara felt contentment settle over her like a warm blanket. The kingdom was thriving. The reforms she and Caspian had implemented, strengthening protections for omegas, creating opportunities for wolves from minor packs, ending the practice of exile for political crimes, were working. Wolves who'd once been considered weak now served in positions of power. The hierarchy that had crushed her was slowly being dismantled, replaced by something more just. It wasn't perfect. Change never was. But it was better. Do you ever think about him? Caspian asked quietly. She knew who he meant. Damon, rotting in his cell, forgotten by everyone except the guards who brought his meals. Sometimes, not with anger anymore, mostly with pity. Pity? He had everything: power, position, privilege, and he wasted it on cruelty. While I had nothing and built everything. She turned in Caspian's arms to face him. He's the one who lost in the end. And what did you gain? Everything that matters. Love, purpose, a kingdom to serve, children to raise, and a mate who sees me for exactly who I am. A silver wolf who refused to stay broken. A survivor who became a queen. One of the twins, Lyra, the older by 3 minutes, ran up to them. Mama, Sarah won't share. Won't share what? The stick. I found it first. Elara knelt down to her daughter's level. Or you could find another stick and both play together. There are thousands in this garden. Lyra considered this, then ran off, already forgetting the conflict. Wise counsel, your majesty, Caspian teased. I learned from experience. Sometimes the thing you're fighting over isn't worth the fight. They watched their daughters play until sunset, then carried them inside for dinner and bedtime stories. That night, lying in bed beside her mate, Elara thought about the journey that had brought her here. From a weak Omega rejected in front of hundreds, to an exile surviving